very good idea.
There we go.
Thank you, Lene. And that's Lene Wells, who is our planning and zoning administrator. And she's joining us by Zoom this evening because she has to travel far to get here. And we told her that that would be not a good idea tonight. So we appreciate that she's here with us by Zoom. The second thing on our agenda right now is that you're invited to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance if you would like.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 3 on our agenda, and just for your information, there are agendas in the back if you did not get one. And if you plan to speak this evening, we would like you to sign in the back to somewhat legibly so that we can record that properly on the minutes. Okay, because we do ask you to introduce yourself when you speak too. Is there any additions or corrections to this agenda this evening?
I believe so.
There are. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to start?
Sure. So under. Do you want my issue to be first or?
Well, I can start actually. if you
Okay,
want.
yeah,
All right, we are going to add under old business an update by Helmrich regarding a change in position on the planning commission and
Staff.
So that will be the first order of business under old business. And then we would also like to add the appointment of a township member to the Rural Character Commission or Rural Character Committee, which is, yeah, anyway, Daniel will do that. And then I would also like to add under that some discussion on the reporting tool that Daniel and I worked on initially, and then Mike Worth took it over and put it all together, and Denise put all our information in it. So it's really a reporting tool for the advisory committees, which we were calling special committees, but we've been asked to call them advisory committees by a board member, which makes total sense. Then we would also like to add an update about ODC in an upcoming meeting. Is that correct? Yes.
that's correct.
Okay, and Daniel will do that. And then I would just like to add a special thank you in after that, after the committee reports. Is there any other additions to tonight's agenda?
Am I understanding that all that's going under old business?
Yes.
Okay. I move to accept the
Oh,
agenda.
I do have one more item. So addressing special / advisory committees
Uh-huh.
under
we
item
had that.
F. Do you have that?
Yeah, that's part of, I was gonna address that in A. so-
Okay,
Okay,
or board updates.
okay, that's fine, then we don't have to
Okay, so there's no more additions.
volunteer for secretary or no,
well, that's under the,
under A.
under
Okay,
A,
perfect.
that would be part of it.
Mhm.
Okay, now, would you like to move it?
Okay, I move the approval of the agenda with those additions and under old business, and I'm not sure exactly how many you have underneath there, but
There's a ton.
whatever it is, we just, how you ever put them in.
She's got them listed.
Okay.
I'll
I
second.
move to approve.
Okay, so moved by Webster and supported by Eiley. So the agenda has been approved. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Next, we would like to approve the minutes. We have two planning commission meeting minute packets here. The first one is from 11/22/21. And the reason we didn't approve that at our meeting 2.5 weeks later or 3 weeks later was because it was such a long meeting and we did not have the minutes done at that time. So we'll be approving 2 months minutes this evening. So commissioners, you have 11/22 there. Okay, any additions or corrections to page 1? Page 2? Page 3? Page 4? Page 5? Page 6? Page 7?
On page 6, actually,
Oh, yeah, page 6.
third paragraph, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines down. Special lane should be land.
Anything else on page 6? Page 7? Page 8? Page 9? Page 10? Page 11? Page 12? Page 13? Page 14? Page 15? Page 16? Page 17? We will do approval of the minutes separately, so could I please have a motion for approving the minutes as amended with one correction for November 22, 2021?
So moved.
Moved by Webster, supported by
I'll second.
Supported by Eiley. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. And moving on to the minutes of December 13, 2021, please. Any corrections on page 1? Page 2? Page 3? Page 4? Page 5? Page 6? Page 7? Page 8? Thank you, Daniel. You do a wonderful job with the minutes.
Thank you.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
What did you move for?
For approval of the minutes.
For
Of
December
December
13,
13,
2021. Moved by Webster, supported by Brown. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Anyone opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Okay, the next part of our agenda is public comment. On our agenda this evening, we do have a site plan review and a public hearing. If you're here for the public hearing, you are welcome to speak at that public hearing section, and often that's where you would speak. But you are welcome to speak in public comments too. In public comments, we ask that you keep your comments to approximately 3 minutes. Please start with your name and your address, and you'll be addressing the commissioners with your comments. So is there anyone in row 1 who would like to start? Roy, please.
why else would I be out on a nice night like this?
Exactly.
Just very quick recap.
And who is this?
This
Neighbors.
is, oh, please state your
oh,
name and your
yeah.
address.
How can I forget that?
I
Roy
don't know.
McElwain, 3466 Riverside Drive, Saugatuck Township, over on the river. This whole thing started with the historic, about item C on your agenda tonight, the historic district. A few neighbors sent a letter to the township board for their last meeting, and this is recapped briefly, but second thing that happened, we had the letter reprinted in the commercial record, and then there were a lot more neighbors who added their name to that. And what I've done is just given you, to make it official for the record, the names of all of the residents that live on the river or just off the river in that area of Pine Trail Camp. And that's the second thing is, and I've got a copy here for everybody, is just to urge you to consider this, and we hope take the next step. We are all interested in preserving the historic nature of the area. We went through this even on trying to get our road repaved. It became an issue, and we are historic along the river there. Second item is apparently I have found out today that the city of Saugatuck does not have anything comparable ordinance-wise to an overlay zoning. And we would urge you to hopefully contact the city of Saugatuck and see if they would also join in, because they own an awful lot of river frontage, or not own, but they have responsibility for the riverfront on the west side and south side of the river there when it makes the turn. So that's another item that I came tonight to urge you to do. So that's it. I'm under my 3 minutes. Just pass these out. Or you
Oh,
want me to
sure,
go?
that would be great.
All right.
That was shared with everyone.
I don't want anybody to have to share that. Kindergarten.
He has names added, and I don't
I
have
don't have that either.
that. Thank
They
you,
were all in
Ron.
the paper.
The letter, John said he had given it to everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for the update.
Sure. Oh, yeah, you have an extra one.
Oh, I'm not sure. I know
Okay,
why.
I didn't see it.
That was for the recording secretary.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Can you hear us again, Lene?
Yes, I lost you just for a second there when Roy stepped away.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Is there anyone else in row one who would like to speak? Row two? Row two?
I'm not sure if I guess I'm supposed to speak right now, but we're here for our application that we put in for our dispensary in Saugatuck. And this is some of the information. We turned in everything with Lene, and the only thing we're missing was some of the questions that if you guys would have, that we put together with our lawyer. He's also here that can answer some of the questions.
Okay.
And my name is Maria Mendoza. I'm at 2262 54th Street in Benville.
Thank you, Maria.
I don't know if you guys have any other questions for us.
We can't ask questions during public
Okay.
comment.
Right, we don't ask questions now, but you will have an opportunity, and we will have an opportunity to ask you questions at your, at the item on the agenda when you come up, okay?
Okay, all right, thank you.
So it's coming shortly. Okay. Is there anyone else? Hi.
My name is Scott Waringa, address is 6618 Dugout Road. And my name was on the letter as well that Roy read, but I just have a few other comments that I wanted to say. Thank you for the opportunity to say a few words. As a relative newcomer to the Saugatuck area, I want to remind you of what you have here. I think the software.
No, you still take that one. That's-
As a relative newcomer to the area, I just want to remind you of what you have here. And I don't imply that you don't know, but sometimes it's just good to see something through fresh eyes. You have a quaint, fun, old-fashioned, history-rich, small town on the water with a welcoming and warm population. Absolutely stunning natural areas from the Kalamazoo River to Lake Michigan, and from the beaches and dunes to acres of beautiful woods. It's incredibly attractive, and it's no wonder why so many people want a piece of it. Your responsibility as planning commission and as members of the board, those of you who are, along with the boards of the cities of Saugatuck and Douglas, is to balance the tension between old and new, keeping things the same and managing change. There do need to be improvements, things like the bike trail, the nature trails that John Vanderbeek is working on, Blue Star highway safety improvements, internet infrastructure, and other road improvements, affordable housing, to name a few. However, too much development or the wrong kind, and you run the risk of killing what we have here in Saugatuck, and you just become another Holland or Grand Haven. And not that those places are bad, it's just they're not Saugatuck. And figuring out what is the wrong kind is not easy, and I don't envy you that, but I do believe there are some things that you can have in place that will help you make decisions that will protect the things that everyone here values. Expanding the natural river overlay district seems to me to be an easy and very powerful way to protect the natural features of the area that we all value. So I encourage you to work with the township board to pass a resolution creating an overlay district. And then, as Roy mentioned, I also encourage you to reach out to the city of Saugatuck to partner with you in doing this, as they have many feet of river frontage as well. And then I also do encourage you, Daniel did a fantastic job on the historic district report. Reminded me of like back in high school doing a term paper or something. I don't envy you, but you did a fantastic job. So I just want to encourage you guys to think about that portion of it as well. And I just thank you for your time tonight and for all of you guys coming out on a snowy Monday night as well. So thank you. Would it help you to have my notes?
Yeah, if you
Yeah,
can,
there's nothing special.
that'd be fantastic.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Waringa. Thank you for
Yeah.
coming out on a snowy night too.
Thank you.
Hearing what you have to say. Is there anyone else that would like to address the planning commission this evening? Okay, then at this time, I will move on from public comments into new business. The first item on our new business is a public hearing. It's a special land use, adult use marijuana retailer in the C3 district on parcel 020-038-10. Applicant is Maria Mendoza, and the name of the business, I believe, is Be Positive Best Buds. Lene, would you like to start with reviewing the project?
Sure. And as I promised, I would be scrolling during this and kind of looking over to one side, but essentially you have a request from the Mendozas for a cannabis retail business. This is what would be the corner of kind of Just Barnes and Blue Star Highway. So it's west of Just Barnes Drive entrance. So it's a new use. It is located on a piece of property that was recently divided by the owner, and it's zone C3, which is a permitted use and this use is permitted as a special land use in the district. The applicant has provided a site layout, an odor control plan, information about their registration with the state. So they're pre-approved for this type of industry. And they've also provided some additional information tonight. I know they provided some written explanation about their request. I'm going to zoom out here a little bit, but tonight you're simply looking at the use and whether the special approval use meets our standards. If you believe that it does, we've recommended one of the conditions be that they return with a full detailed site plan because this is new construction. Oftentimes, we don't see the detailed site plan at the special land use stage because it is a big investment to do all the architecture, all the engineering right up front when they don't know whether the use would be approved or not. A couple things I also wanted to alert you to is that I did have a conversation with the adjacent property owner to the north and west, Joe Malakas, and I know he's on the call. Joe alerted me to the fact that there is a 20-foot easement on the north side of this property. So on the screen, there's kind of a 20-foot space, and that easement is for ingress and egress. And it gives the right to Joe to the west and north to traverse this 20 feet to access Blue Star Highway. That easement is on the deed. He did provide me the drawings. I believe it was in the land division request that the applicant has. However, it was not included on this site plan or this, I would say, concept plan. So I did receive an email today from the applicant and their engineer that they're already working on updating the plans. They've already included this easement on their next version of the drawing if this is to move forward. So it's nothing that the applicant cannot accommodate, and it's nothing that they're concerned about. So I just wanted to give you that. Essentially, their building would face Blue Star Highway. It would adhere to the required setbacks and parking requirements. I just thought I would go through the special land use standards. So in our ordinance, we have specific standards for marijuana businesses. And we did note that the first standard is that the facility shall be set back from property lines, include landscape screening and walls. They do show that their setbacks would be met and be the same as what's required in the C3 district. I did mention that access easement in my report. The site is heavily wooded, and I assume and the woods would remain. They would have to adhere to our Blue Star Highway tree preservation ordinance as well. Oh, I need to move the screen over. Is that better?
Yes.
The applicant shall provide a plan for storage and disposal of marijuana. I didn't see anything specifically detailed other than they do have a dumpster on their site plan. So this item number 2 is something that the Planning Commission might want to ask the Mendozas, or maybe it's something the Mendozas will address in their public comment. Typically, what we see for these types of retailers is they have a policy in place that any like if there's any cuttings or there's any kind of residual cannabis, that it is mixed up with kitty litter or some other type of material before it's disposed of. We also often see that a dumpster has a locking mechanism on the gate. So those would be things that, you know, you could require, or perhaps the Mendozas will be speaking to tonight. Item number 3, no marijuana would be stored overnight outside of an enclosed building. I don't have a detailed security plan. And so I don't see any reference to where or any statement that says marijuana would not be stored overnight. I guess this should be an N. So again, I think that would be something to talk about with the Mendozas. Typically, the security plans detail like how many cameras will be installed. Often there's a key card security system. I know with other marijuana provisioning or retailers in the township, we've heard comments that before you even walk in the door, there have been, you know, dozens of photographs and video footage of you because it is so highly secured on the exterior of the building. Number 4 is about signage. We just included a condition, if this were to move forward, that the signage would conform to the zoning ordinance. Number 5, the condition about stack licenses is met. Number 6 relates to odor control, and we did receive a detailed odor control plan from the applicant, and that plan is sufficient and it does meet our requirements. And they did state that they would have negative air pressure within the building, and that and we did add a condition that windows and doors would remain locked except for ingress and egress. For provisioning centers, we stipulate the hours of operation be between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. The applicant has stated that they would abide by that. In fact, they intend to close an hour early at 8 p.m. We did have a standard about delivery hours, and we're including that as a condition if this were to move forward because it wasn't expressly stated in their application. And that the standard about marijuana visibility from the windows is also a standard in the state law as well. So we believe that based on their layout, they'll be able to achieve that requirement. Then we have the general special approval use standards. The use is a special approval use in C3. It's in the commercial area of the township. It's near a highway interchange. So it is harmonious with the character of the area. We have other provisioning centers and retailers and grow facilities in that part of our community. The approval will not change the character of the area. I mean, certainly right now the character is wooded and vacant, so any development would change the character. So this specific use wouldn't change it in any way that is not contemplated in the zoning district. The approval shall not be hazardous or involve uses, activities, materials, equipment detrimental to the health, safety, or welfare. Because of the conditions that we've included in any approval, those impacts would be mitigated. So we feel like the standard would be met, and that the approval, the use would not place additional demands on public facilities or services. And we found that it would not. The hours of operation are consistent with other commercial uses. They're going to have secured transport and delivery, but we do ask that they just confirm that the hours would be as we stipulate, and that we do request a security plan and more information about disposal of kind of spent material, I guess I would say. So based on that, I think it is important to hear from the applicant and hear from the public. This is a public hearing. If you were to move forward with this new use, we would recommend a condition that a detailed site plan be provided that has all the utility, grading, drainage, architecture, lighting, landscaping, all of our required materials that we see in a detailed site plan submittal. A condition about the windows and doors remaining closed, that there be negative air pressure at all times, that we have a statement in writing about the hours of deliveries, that setbacks be met, that a boundary survey be provided. And again, I think that that's something that they have in place already. And as I mentioned earlier, that they are already updating their plan to show that 20-foot easement. Driveways, this area is near the interchange. So we have a condition that MDOT and the Road Commission review the driveway location and that the design of a driveway meet their standards. Certainly they could explore access through other means, but they do need to have access to their site. There is a kind of access road to the north. Right now they're showing a driveway off onto Blue Star Highway, but they're really going to need to work on coordinating that with the jurisdictions that have authority over that. That lighting be downward facing and comply with our ordinance. We've asked that the applicant provide a description and plan for storage and disposal of marijuana, that they provide that security plan, that signage conform to the ordinance, that the architecture meet our ordinance requirements, that there be no drive-through operation unless they amend their special approval use, and that the applicant adhere to all the requirements of state, local, and federal agencies. The fire district, they will provide a review during the site plan if this moves forward. So again, any conditions of the fire district or the engineer, any other reviewing agencies be met. So that's what we have for you today. I'm happy to circle back to the layout if you want to look at that or any other section of this memo.
Lene, this is going to be a new building, is that correct?
Yeah, yep, it's new.
Not
construction.
A redo of an existing?
No,
Okay.
no, it's currently vacant. It's, you know where the, like the lumber over ISIL is, and then there's storage buildings. So it is just south of that, between the interchange and that development.
I went out there today, but-
It's on the west side of the road, correct? Not the east side.
Yeah, do I say east side somewhere?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned. It's on your
It's on the
summary
west side, okay.
memo.
Okay, because here I said it's west of Just Barnes Drive. I don't know where, I'm sorry.
Top,
Okay,
the
that's
top of
what I
your
wanted.
memo.
Oh.
Southeast, yeah.
I figured it out, but I just wanted to make sure.
Right, thanks.
Sorry about
Just to
that.
clarify, is the Malakas property, the north adjacent that has the easement, is that where he has storage facilities or?
Yes, yes. And I believe there's a discussion about making this access a private road as well at some point. Which is why I brought up that idea of like a driveway in this location. But again, this is private property, so that would have to be coordinated with others, you know, like if be a private road here, they're also going to need review and approval by the road commission and other reviewing entities. So
there's no driveway now in that easement area?
there is a driveway right here, but not in the easement. I think there's a bit of an opening. I could pull up the street view, but I believe the main drive in is just to the north. Within the 20-foot easement, I think there's just some vegetation that's been covered and maybe a chain link informal gate.
Thank you. Yeah, I was a little confused by the east-west. I wanted to just make sure.
It wasn't just
I
me.
thought I knew, but okay. Well, thank you, Lene. At this time, I'd like to ask the applicants if they or who's ever representing them would like to introduce their project and expand on it a little more. Or you want to do it.
I'm not sure if you guys would want this one. This one is the one that we did the changes on.
And
That's,
please just state your name again for the
Okay,
record.
Maria Mendoza,
Okay.
2262 54th Street.
So that's different than what we have here?
That's the one that we had submitted to Lene, and then they contacted her about the easement.
And
So
that's what that is?
we worked on the other one
Please,
right away.
we can pass it on.
Okay.
Thank you.
I do have a question for you while we're doing that. I would like to have an extra copy of the lease for Lene on her desk. And could I have a copy of this new information packet that you passed out that talks about the kitty litter? And
You want another one besides that one?
I would like one for Lene.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna email her that one too.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, I can give her
I
that
just
one.
want to make sure she gets that information.
Yeah, when we're still working with our, with an engineer to engineer our building, so moving forward, if this is all approved, we have somewhat of an idea of what we wanted our building to look like. And then we can, once that gets approved, we can start off with the lighting and all of that other stuff.
I got one for Lene.
We're good, yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Sure.
Oh, there's something.
I brought 8 copies.
Thank you.
Perhaps Maria, do you want to just provide an overview of like the key things that you have identified in that drawing that you're handing out? And then maybe just provide a little overview to some of those items related to security and disposal.
Yeah, and so in the package that we gave you guys, there was the way we would dispose of the extras or residue and stuff. So we would use cat litter and mix it in there, throw it in bags and then in a locked container into our trash can that's also gonna be locked. I don't remember what other question was on that.
Do you want a copy of this?
Yes.
Your security plan, you have a security plan?
We have talked about it, yes, so, yes. Oh, I thought she was gonna say something. Once we get approval on our building, depending on where we're gonna have our, like, our windows and put our security cameras, and then work with, a security team so they can help us all around in the entrance and in the back warehouse and stuff.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Well, we may when we have our discussion, but right
Okay.
now, we're gonna, is there anyone else that would like to introduce the project or speak to the project?
Yeah, good evening, Mark Zietlow on behalf of the business. I'm an attorney in Holland.
Okay.
I have been involved with helping them get licensed through the state of Michigan.
Okay,
The state of Michigan has pre-qualified the Mendozas. They feel very good about their character. They feel very good that this is the kind of people that they want to support. They have said, yes, we have your encouragement to move forward with this project. They are fully supportive of the industry. The Michigan Marijuana Regulatory Agency has said, this has been a kind of a type of industry that we want to help grow in Michigan. No pun intended to the word grow. But, you know, they're here, the state is behind these folks. They want to help them. They want to help them get up and going. They want to set a national standard. They want Michigan to be a national standard, this kind of a business. So just so you know, the state has already reviewed them and their project, and they feel this is something they want to get behind, you know, so they've already reviewed it. They've already approved it. So they're fully supportive of them, and we're asking you to be the same.
thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to introducing the project for right now? Okay, then at this time, I would like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to speak to this project? Seeing that there is no one, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, do you have any questions or would you like to start discussion on this project? Mike?
I read over everything and I guess the only question I would have is why wouldn't we approve this? Looks like it's all very well prepared, solid business, and according to Lene's exceptions and so forth that seem to be able to be worked through it. Looks like a good proposal. That's my comment.
As I looked at this and in looking at the zoning ordinance, both our master plan in regards to commercial use and location within the township, and looking at the C3 district and what we say is a statement of purpose within our zoning ordinance, this to me meets that level of need, and there would be no reason from a master plan perspective and or zoning ordinance, that we would not look at this location and it appears to be appropriate use of the land within this area. So I don't, again, there's a whole bunch of other, I understand Lene with all these conditions, but I mean, this is a special use permit, and also realizing that we're not looking at any site plan. They certainly know what needs to get done as the site plan comes to us in total review. But as we look at some of those conditions, I think they're very much aware that we need that detailed site plan, and that is a requirement, both from the boundary survey, the driveway, all this local, state, and federal laws. I mean, just everything, the fire department, the township engineer. I mean, that's going to be looked at in regards to the site plan, but from a special use perspective, in regards to the land, I don't see any reason why we would not as well. I'd be certainly supportive at this location.
Go ahead.
Yeah, my only comment on that, and it's not a pertinent comment for what we're doing today, but it would just be more in the sense of what's the business plan? They're adjacent to two existing provisioning centers, and this would be the fourth one in the township. But as I said, that's not the purpose of tonight's hearing. Just throwing that out there. And I know we're not doing a site plan, but you just handed out this rendering of the exterior of the building. I just note that there's a drive-through window indicated, and I believe we just reviewed that drive-through would not be permittable at this point. That's my
We can take
comment.
that out.
Okay.
Dave, do you have anything to add?
I have nothing new to add. I
Yeah.
tend to agree with everything that's been said.
Jackie?
I agree with everything that's been said too, and most of my comments are regarding the site plan, which this really isn't a site plan review, so I'll withhold those issues.
Daniel?
I have nothing to add. I noted the drive-through window too. But no, I'm happy that you brought this project to us, and yeah, I'm happy that you see the potential in Saugatuck and that you want to invest the time and the money and the energy to bring this proposal or bring this business to our community.
I would just like to kind of end the conversation by saying thank you for bringing this proposal up to us. I think it's very good for our community to understand that when we voted to have marijuana in the community, it was an all or nothing. And so there is no way we can regulate numbers. And sometimes people say, well, we have so many. Well, you're either in or out, and people don't always understand that. We don't regulate numbers whatsoever, but you have a lot of work ahead of you, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you more. So best of luck.
Thank you.
And is there a motion?
Are you gonna put anything in any of these?
Yeah, I would.
I would put them all.
Well, I'm not sure if from Lene, do we need all of them? Because again, this is not a site plan review, but are there certain ones that really, as I read those, I circled for sure, and unfortunately, and you probably don't have all this, but, or maybe you do, but for the minutes and discussion, to go with Mike's motion, is that a detailed site plan will be submitted as a condition for special use. And number 6, the applicant will provide the township with the boundary survey that includes the commitments and all easements. The driveway will be reviewed and approved by Michigan Department of Transportation and or the County Road Commission. The applicant shall adhere to all requirements, standards of applicable law, local, state, federal laws, including ordinance 4746 at all times. And I believe that ordinance is the marijuana one, correct? Lene?
Yeah, that's 40-746.
That's that ordinance, right?
Yeah,
The marijuana?
yeah.
Okay, so that means that covers a lot of things that which was discussed.
Yeah, that, I guess that covers like 2, 3,
4, 5,
yeah,
5 setbacks, so you know that they have to have the setbacks, okay? The
yeah,
building
yeah.
shall be designed to meet the architectural standards of section 4622. All conditions set forth by the fire district. All
All the
conditions of the
drive-through.
township engineer. All conditions of utility district. And all conditions shall be met by all reviewing parties and all fees paid prior to issuance of the building permit.
I would keep the drive-through to, or unless you,
Which one's that? I'm sorry.
14.
Yeah, 'cause it says-
Okay, there shall be no drive-through through the operations, okay, unless a special use is amended, okay. I could see under number 14. So Daniel, for the minutes, I chose 1, 6, 7, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18.
11 should be on there too. It
So
says
should
that's-
9.
Why don't we do all?
Why?
18?
Why
Yeah, why
don't we do all 18?
Let's just-
Why? And that's site plan review,
It's listed.
right?
It's
It's listed.
listed.
But
It's a
still.
recommendation.
It's a recommendation. I would do that.
Well, I would disagree with the commission, but whatever you guys think.
No,
I
I'm
would
glad
say
you
we would
reviewed
do
them
it.
all. That was
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah,
With
but
the
the following
I disagree with that.
recommendations.
And not limited to. You know, because there may be more.
I understand the discussion and why. I mean, I think that Denise helps me, you know, like moving forward with future special land uses. Perhaps they don't need to be reiterated here if we just refer back to the ordinance. But
Sometimes it helps the applicants too.
To know what to
I
look
agree
for.
with
Yes,
Yeah.
it's just helpful to have it detailed out.
it's helpful for even like the building inspector, for staff too. It's just kind of one less paper that we have to go back to, that it's kind of just all here in one list, but I get it. I understand both ways.
And part of why it wasn't on the list is when they submitted answers to the questions, it wasn't addressed. Some of those things weren't addressed, like the kitty litter, like the locking. And so that's the locking of windows and doors, so I don't know.
You guys have my opinion of it, so, whatever Mike did the motion, again, it was just part of the motion in
Mike
regards to
made a
the,
motion.
is that we just can't move to approve. We have to talk about
What are we
more than
approving?
just move to approve.
Mhm,
Correct.
We have to have a little bit more than that.
mhm.
I provided that, so,
You provided good discussion points.
so
Mike, would you like to complete your motion?
I don't know what to say. I could move to, move ahead with the proposal and per all their recommendations that have been made by Lene.
Conditions.
Conditions, right?
Moved by Worth? Is there support?
Yes.
Supported by Brown? Is there any more discussion? There may be more recommendations that will come eventually. Be aware of that. All right. So this will be a roll call vote. So Eiley,
Yes.
Elmrick,
Yes.
DeFranco,
Abstain.
Brown,
Yes.
Webster,
I support the special use, yes.
Worth,
Yes.
Israel's yes. Motion passes with 6 yeses and 1 abstain. Moving on to item B is on the agenda is a site plan review. Thank you. Okay. Site plan review. You ready, Lene? Okay. We're gonna take a 1-minute break for water.
I'm just gonna see.
Go see if there is any,
Yeah, we don't mind next time we get some.
but maybe for the next meeting, we will.
Well, I tried calling Daniel, but he didn't answer.
What do you mean, you called me?
I did, yeah, on my way in to see if you wanted me to grab a piece of water. and he
I was
didn't
waiting to
answer.
see if you left a message.
Oh.
I didn't know who I screened.
It would be nice to have.
I just muted while we take this little break. And I've got the site plan app.
Thank you.
I think we're good now.
Okay, thank you. Item number 6, new business, element B, site plan review. 6 commercial warehouse buildings located at 3500 Commercial Boulevard in the C1 district on parcel 20-003-049-01. The applicant is Scott Botscraft of North Shore of Saugatuck. Lene, would you like to begin?
Yeah, I will go through some of this, and I think Scott is also on the line. But as you know, this is an existing development. It's a continuation of a series of warehouse, almost like a light industrial or quasi-industrial, but commercial buildings. The use that Scott has stipulated that conforms with our C1 district is called wholesale sales and storage warehouse, which are permitted in our C1 district. The on the screen right here is just a plat, Michigan plat of survey it's called, but it shows the existing parcels here. I believe that Scott has submitted for, and I'm not sure if it's final or not, but he has condominiumized at least the first phase, and maybe he's in the process of the second phase, but we should clarify that. But there are 2 condominiums here for those first 2 phases, and then this portion of the parcel where the cul-de-sac is the final phase. As the chairwoman mentioned, there are 6 buildings proposed. The portion of this property where these 6 buildings are located is 6.5 acres. The design of the buildings is exactly what has been proposed and is what you see on the site today. It's the same architecture, the same building construction. we did ask the applicant about utilities, and he stated in his narrative that's on the screen, while not initially planned, if it becomes necessary, that water and septic would be provided. City water is at the road edge, and then there are 2 areas on the site plan reserved for future septic and drain fields. He states that proper permitting and approvals from the Allegan County Health Department and Eagle will guide and regulate the installation of septic systems. In terms of stormwater, he states that the existing area, medium sand on a relatively flat site. The lot coverage is 22%, so there's ample area for retention. And a grading plan and stormwater calculations will be provided to the township. And we've also stipulated that in our review and also in the review of the township engineer. So I'll just scroll to, these are the plans for the building architecture. During phase 2, we had a very detailed discussion about building materials, windows, and this design conforms with our standards for architecture. And then let me proceed to 75. So this is a layout. You can see the cul-de-sac, and then the pavement would extend around the back of the site. There would also be connection from this cul-de-sac to these 2 proposed buildings. He mentions in the site plan that the tree buffer would remain at the property edges. There's area here in the center for the stormwater drainage, here on the east for septic, and then space for the fire truck turnaround. I know that in the site plan review from the fire district, they did mention needing some additional space for the turnaround. And we've included in the conditions that this site plan would need to be approved by the fire district. There are landscaped medians in the parking areas. It's hard to determine all the parking requirements because we don't have end uses with employees per se. And then here's the building frontages. And then let me go to the staff report. Sorry, I appreciate you guys being patient about the toggling that's having to happen. Okay. All right, so a couple of things I wanted to alert you to. First is that currently a large portion of this 3rd phase is within the Eagle critical dune boundary. And I did take the opportunity to discuss this with Eagle. I contacted the gentleman that oversees critical dune reviews, and I asked whether it's typical or best practice for Eagle to provide their review and approval prior to the municipality, or whether it can happen in reverse, because we don't have any approval from Eagle at this point. And he said that there really is no best practice, that throughout the state, they see it happen either way. Either the applicant bring their approval to the planning commission with their site plan, or a condition is added to a municipal site plan approval that the applicant get the permits required by Eagle. I also asked, well, if we were to approve it before you, would you feel pressure, like that you had to say yes because we said yes? And he said, nope, a municipal decision does not bearing on our decisions. We have our own set of requirements. So I just wanted you to know that I did do that research, and initially, uncertain about how they prefer things. The applicant and the project does have a rear setback that needs to increase to 50 feet. Right now it's shown at 20. So we did note that that needs to change. We need an additional 30 feet at the rear because the rear of the property or the north is zoned residential. So we have an additional setback when commercial is next to residential. For landscaping, again, we noted about the critical dune. That area on this site is relatively flat. And when I talked to Eagle, they informed me that their biggest concern with critical dune is where you have steep slope and a lot of elevation change. He said that they typically issue permits where sites are relatively flat. So that also provided me some understanding related to this application because this application is on a site that is relatively flat. The standard about natural resource features and preserving wetlands, steep slopes, woodlands. The applicant is proposing new construction, so some trees will be removed, but he has stipulated that there is a tree buffer that would remain. Some of that tree buffer is outside of the property boundaries, so I'm not certain whether that buffer will remain in perpetuity or how or what the vision is for that buffer. You know, should properties change hands or should the applicant want to develop that land in the future, would that buffer remain? In terms of stormwater and sedimentation, the township engineer requested that stormwater calculations be provided. And so we've included that condition. We've also included a condition that the stormwater and drainage plan be reviewed by the Allegan County Drain Commissioner. In terms of visual and sound privacy for any adjacent dwelling units, there aren't any adjacent dwelling units, and I did note that they have identified buffer yards to remain. But again, I'm curious what sort of long-term preservation of those buffer yards is proposed. The internal drives, those are mostly regulated by the fire district because of their turnaround requirements. So a condition's added that those conform to the standards of the fire district. Items 8 and 9 are met about access and service drives. Item 10 is not applicable. Item 11, this came up last time. I think we need to continue to discuss dumpsters and trash removal. I know the applicant stated that there would be, I think, cart service, which was one solution, especially when the applicant owned all of the buildings and all of the space. But if those are now being sold through condos, I'm curious what the vision is for trash removal. The lighting shall conform to the township's lighting plan. They did provide some lighting cut sheets. I do need to update this, but it does appear that the lighting conforms to our ordinance. Item 13 is not applicable. Item 14 is not applicable. However, that turnaround does need to be reviewed by the fire district. The wastewater treatment, we added a condition that the applicant and the project comply with the requirements of the engineer, the county, and any other relevant reviewing agency. 16 is a little tricky because we don't know what will be stored in these buildings. This standard is about hazardous materials and discharging chemicals that could affect the surface water or groundwater. This area is within our groundwater protection overlay. And we added a requirement that floor drains or any other areas of discharge would have to be addressed by the applicant before a building permit's issued. that the applicant comply with any requirements of the township engineer. I also added a condition that that the storage or warehousing of any hazardous materials be prohibited, and that all materials and the storage of those materials be disclosed in any rental agreement between either this applicant or, I guess, future owners. That's the because things can be sold and you just don't have control. And I guess the control that you do have is that anyone in this development or any development has to conform to our township ordinance. Then we also mentioned, so that's why I have that sentence here, that future owners would have to abide by the requirements of the ground protection overlay as well. Number 17 states that no storage should be within any emergency access area. And we just added a standard that no outdoor storage be permitted. It's not shown on the plan, and certainly it's not part of this review and approval. So we're just saying that it's prohibited. Number 19, we there would not be issues related to electrical, electromagnetic, or radio frequencies. Number 20, all solid, liquid, and sanitary waste shall be treated and disposed of in accordance with the standards of the county. I mentioned the standard about hazardous materials, but we also have a condition about county, local, and state review and approval of all the infrastructure. And 21, similarly, we've added a standard about local, state, and federal requirements for other reviewing agencies that would have jurisdiction. The next set of requirements relate to the architecture, and we found that those standards were met. We did add that rooftop mechanicals shall be screened. And then we've included some recommendations and things to consider. This report was issued last week on Tuesday. But it includes all the things that I talked about in my report. I do want to highlight item number 9. Uses on the property must be a use right in the C1 district. You know, I know that over time, when we first reviewed phase 1 and then subsequently with phase 2, we asked about restrooms because these buildings do not include any restrooms or kitchen or any kind of other facility. They're just kind of white boxes. And over time, those buildings have morphed and restrooms have been added. Folks have mentioned some cooking facilities, even bedrooms or lofts, and describe them as kind of man caves. And, you know, I think that we might want to have a discussion about the uses and C1 uses and maybe elaborate in our conditions or discuss some of this with the applicant, because it does seem like these buildings are kind of morphing and taking on a life of their own, especially when they're condominiumized and they change hands, which is a property right. I mean, that's something people are able to do, but I just feel like we need to tie that down a little bit because of some safety concerns. I mean, if you're storing materials on one side of a building and in a detached wall that is probably not, you know, fire rated for residential next to it, I mean, there's a concern there. And we don't allow residential or dwelling or habitating in the C1 district. We allow commercial uses. So I guess that I've included some additional conditions related to master deed and bylaws for the previous 2 phases for our records. We've included a standard about a dumpster enclosure being provided if it's applicable. We also do have a site condominium ordinance, and that relates to site condos, not as much, that relates to condominiums and site condominiums. But typically that's invoked when that's proposed at the time of site plan review and development. But if it's something that's not contemplating or not contemplated or proposed at this time, we don't have a process, we don't review it, you know. So, yeah, the condo process can happen outside of site plan review unless it's happening simultaneously and part of the project initially. We did get a letter to the Planning Commission from the Fire District dated January 20th. That was sent out by Chairman Israel's yesterday or today, about some concerns about hazard contents within the building, about the uses that some contain couches, kitchens, TVs, offices, that these buildings are not sprinkled, that there's been complaints about sleeping in the units. We have not received those same complaints, but nevertheless, there are complaints, and they're going to the fire district. So I just hope that you've taken some time to look at that, and perhaps there's things that we need to talk about with the applicant. There's also some suggestions about some uses to prohibit. And if you move forward with this tonight, those could be included in any decision you make. That's all I have.
Thank you, Lene. So my question is this a public hearing?
No, it's not a public hearing. It's just it's a site plan review for the 3rd phase. The applicant is on the line though.
So Mr. Boscraft, would you like to add to your request for this evening?
Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
I think Lene did a very thorough review, maybe a couple corrections if I could. I have not seen the fire department letter that she just spoke of a few moments ago. But I can assure you that there are no residential beds in any of these units, because I've been through the units with the fire department as recent as 4 days ago. And I'm there every day, and I know for a fact that nobody is sleeping in their units. So I'm not sure where that information is coming from, but that is not accurate information by any in any manner. Other than that, I think Lene covered it really well. I think maybe the best thing to do would be to answer questions if you guys have some.
So we'll open this up to commissioners. Do you have questions or discussions? Excuse me.
Next start.
Sure.
Scott, one question. I'm assuming, so correct me if I'm wrong, there's going to be storage of potentially boats, cars, RVs in these buildings. Is that reasonable?
There's been, I mean, take the instance of my building that I'm in. I've got most of an airplane inside of my building. And I think my boat is in there occasionally, my inflatable. And I park my car in there when I'm in there during the day. So
I look at the rest of those buildings, and they got very tall garage doors, which suggests big boats, big RVs, and that's fine. Where I'm leading is that I have a fair sized boat in winter storage, and boaters and car people and RV people tend to do a lot of maintenance work during the winter and even during the summer. And that suggests all kinds of scary materials being used in those areas, paint, solvents. Cars and boats are typically stored full of gas. That's good practice for taking care of the engines and so forth. So it's concerning as to what is going to be stored in these and what kind of associated maintenance materials are going to be in that building used and disposed of. So that's my question, concern.
Yeah, and I think the best way to answer it is maybe take the instant of the first building that's on the corner. The first building on the corner is owned by a gentleman out of Chicago who came in for a special use permit to market and sell and wholesale used cars, mostly, antique cars. So there's a couple 57 T-Birds and some other cars that are inside of it. But all of these buildings inside are all highly polished concrete floors. They're all air conditioned spaces. And so they haven't really morphed into, they really don't lend to heavy mechanical or heavy construction work in, because it's almost a shame to get them dirty on the inside. A few of the people on the board have stopped by and have kind of toured you around some of the buildings. And I think, it's kind of an unusual in your district, your C1, unless they, like the guy in the corner comes in for a special use permit, dictates what people are going to be able to do over there. And I don't recollect anybody in there that's doing anything that's hazardous. Each one of these units have firewalls that we divided, have a firewall that go up to the roof between each unit. And that's something that's, kind of call beyond what's actually required by building code, just to keep people safe, but it isn't inhabitants or people sleeping in these units or staying overnight. It's a commercial use unit.
Now if I may, the buildings, and it's a beautiful facility you have with all the existing buildings. It's relatively new and probably haven't had enough experience with regard to people renting or buying these and what they're actually going to end up doing over time. I can see where you're saying that nothing's happened yet, but I just got to believe that sooner or later someone's going to be doing some work on these vehicles.
Yeah, and I don't know that, like the guy in the corner that came in for wholesale sales and service, that you guys gave him a special use permit that would allow him to do some work on his cars. I personally know him and I'm in his space quite a bit, and I don't see him doing work in there because he doesn't want to get his space dirty. So his work is done off site and he displays cards there. In fact, I think Eiley's in the beginning was one of his service facilities that allowed him to get a but you're right. The C1 district and special use permits would dictate what people are doing there. But it's pretty tough as a developer to know what every potential customer is going to do down the road. And these 6 buildings that are before you today, I'm not asking to divide them into 30 units or 20 units or 15 units, because it'll take a year to build these units and bring them to market. And as a developer and a builder, there's no way for me to know what the market and what the appetite will look like at that time. So as we get close to that time, it will determine whether they get broken up into pieces or whether they all stay a big unit, and whether they're rented or whether they're sold.
Anyone else?
I have several concerns.
Go right ahead.
In regards to, and Scott, you were given a copy of the letter from our engineer. And there seems to be a lot of issues in regards to your site plan for this phase 3. The ownership structure of this development is not clear. The site plan does not contain a level of detail required by our ordinance 4813. Also, in regards to the critical dune areas, a really big, huge concern. And I think we should get the permit from Eagle first before we move forward. That's my advice. Again, we don't have, is this a condo? We have the bylaws, the road easement, prior to the there's a lot of things within this letter from our engineer that really is concerning. I really think at this point, as well as the issues that came up from our fire department, I understand that we have some disagreement in regards to man caves, whether it's actually being done within those current buildings. And so I'm not sure how we solve that. And maybe Lene, you might have a suggestion about that, but that's a real concern. So I'm not sure why we would move forward with the phase
Can I
three.
answer?
There seems
Can
to
I
be a
answer?
lot of issues here,
Can I
a
address?
lot of issues. Before I would move on, I would have a real trouble supporting this.
Can I answer that?
Yes, Scott, please.
I guess I would like to look at the Prime and Newhoff letter. And if you've got the time, I'd like to just go through them one item at a time. The number one item, the ownership structure, the plan and my detailed narrative identifies it as its North Shore of Saugatuck. There are no other proposed owners at this time. The site plan does not contain the level of the ordinance, which basically would be your stormwater calculations, which we've told Lene, we're only at 22% coverage. We can come up with a stormwater calculations and we can come up with the plans that would satisfy the engineer, but we don't think that that should be a condition of whether this plan should see approval or not, but it should clearly get the approval of the engineer, and that's one of the conditions that we put on there. The next item is just saying the following items should be required for a review. I'm not saying that we should get an EGLE permit, but an EGLE permit isn't really any different than a building permit or a stormwater permit or a septic permit or a well permit. It's a permit that you go get after you've already got plans and approval to go build these buildings, then you would seek EGLE permit. Some of these buildings would be in the critical dunes if they choose not to move the critical dune line to the dunes. Some of the buildings are not. He's asking for copies of bylaws for a master deed showing ownership. There are no condominium master deeds or any bylaws or anything showing different ownership other than what I've already clarified to you. Number one, it's North Shore of Saugatuck. It is not condoed. He's asking for a road easement from a prior phase. Not sure what that has to do with phase 3. D, construction plans for a sanitary sewer. There is no sewer on the plan because there is none proposed at this time. He's asking for construction plans under E for a public water service. There is no public water service proposed on these plans, so none would be provided. F, stormwater is required, and that's a condition that Leanne's put on this review, and I think that should be provided, and we have it ready, and we could actually send that over to him if it's approved by the Planning Commission this evening. And that follows through G, which is this pretty much a redundant or the same thing. And then the rest of the application goes on to water services. And again, water service is not proposed on the plans in front of you today.
What should it be?
But if I'm not planning to put water in the building, I can't put water to the buildings if I don't know that we're going to have water at the buildings. These buildings
Do you
could
have
be.
water to your building, Scott?
I do.
And do you have septic or sewer to your building, Scott?
I do.
What do you have?
I have both at my building. I have water and septic. But water requires, Kalamazoo Lake come out and, you get permit.
We can't hear you.
We're losing your audio.
I have both water and septic. They were not conditioned or a part of my site plan approval for either phases. They were something that morphed later on when we decided to break these things up into smaller units and that we had a need for it. Then we applied.
We cannot hear you. Honestly, we've lost you. There, I heard that cough.
Sorry about that.
We
How
heard
about
your
now?
cough. How many buildings
It's
do
better,
have
it's
water?
better
and
now. Scott, could you
I don't know.
repeat what you were saying about your utilities and stuff?
Here, phase 1 and phase 2 were approved. They were also without water and they were also without septic. Those were items that came up later. Am I gone again?
No.
I'm here. Hello?
Okay,
Hello.
yes, we hear you.
Okay, yeah, the water and the septic, the septic is permitted through Eagle and through Allegan County. And if that's something that is required later, we would go ahead and permit that through the appropriate parties and gain the permits before we would build it. And the water is done through Kalamazoo Lake because it's city water out front. It's water taps that we pay to the township, and then it's approved by Cal Lakes, and then they're installed. But at this time, they're not proposed in these buildings. So the items on your engineer's checklist is hard to put on there if we don't actually know, number one, how many there would be, and number two, if there are going to be any.
I think the concern is if we don't have water, then we don't have fire suppression in the buildings. And as you go back farther, it's more problematic, and we're putting other people at risk if we don't know what the proposed use is. So as we go through all the issues, the understanding is you have 32 units being proposed and 2 additional garage units that are separate, because you have 32 doorways. And it's it's a big package. It's kind of complicated, but very little septic. So your septic's being shared by 16, possibly 17 different units. And part of that septic area to me is the 20 feet that you have to have in rural, kind of a natural character. So it's just, is there enough there? Because it limits where you certainly can't put garbage receptacles back there. And I would assume if we don't know the use, we don't know if we don't have garbage. So it just raises so many questions.
Right.
I appreciate all the questions, but I think the number one thing for us, I think as a group, is that we need to have Eagle approve the use first, approve this. At least we need to have some direction from Eagle first.
And I would actually go further, so that it doesn't like make this project out to be, the bad,
Right.
Because I think it should just be something that we do township wide, just as a policy. Because we have 2 projects going on right now that are in the review stages with the state or the Army Corps. And we're sitting here, so we've approved them, and then we're sitting there and we're waiting for them to then come back to us and say, okay, we got approval from Eagle or Army Corps. And I just feel like we lose, I don't know if control is the right word, but yeah, credibility, some of it is, you lose, you don't know what's going on. And I feel like it should just be a township-wide policy as to how we, address these. So if you have to have these state permits or the federal permits, and our approval is not required to get those, then
Get them first.
Get them first, and then bring them back to us. And to this project, because there were even some comments from the engineer that indicated that, like the septic and those things may factor into that whole Eagle decision. And so then that's, to Becky's point, that's another unknown that we really don't have any control over. So that's kind of how I feel about the whole Eagle, the approval thing as far as state permits and stuff. Sorry.
Can I offer a little bit?
So Scott, as a point of reference, would you look at phase 1 and 2, the completed units? How many are there in phase 1 and 2 total that are up and running?
There are 8 units in phase 1. And there
Just
are
8.
20.
And there are how many?
How many in
phase
2? I'm sorry.
Phase 2 would have 22.
And do you know offhand, or you could get back to us on this, of the existing ones, how many are now under different ownership from North Shores when we initially approved them?
28.
28 of
Right.
30.
Out of 30.
So 28 out of 30 have been sold.
Correct.
Okay. Well done, congratulations. Because I'm thinking back to the issue about ownership and down the road, and that came up in the engineer's letter, and that's, I think, an important.
Yes.
Right, but
Yes.
let's look at it this way. Let's take an example of the marina at North Shore. So let's just say we went along with the gentleman that was just speaking that I couldn't make out in my video. I'm pretty grainy.
Mr. Eiley and John Helmrich. The
All right.
second, the first mail was Dave Eiley, the second mail was John Helmrich.
Well, Mr. Eiley's maybe first. So let's take the case of the marina proposal. So you go to the township first, and one of the conditions of the township approval for the marina was that you would get state approval permits, and you would get an Army Corps permit before you would dig a marina or do whatever you were going to do in the critical dunes. So you go after you have the township approval, you go after your state permits, your building permits, your road permits, your soil erosion permits, your well permits, your septic permits, and your Army Corps permit. Well, some of those permits are, at least in this case, this Army Corps permit's been going on 5 years. It would be unfortunate for a property owner to go spend all the money and all the time and all the effort to go after these state permits and these federal permits, only to get it all done 5 years, 6 years, 7 years down the road, call it 10 years, and then go back to the township and go, okay, we finally got this all nailed down with all of these other utilities and all these other state agencies and federal agencies. Now we would seek, a PUD approval and a special use for a boat basin. And the township would either change the plan or have something else in mind or not like the use. That doesn't seem, from a development and a property owner side, the best way to go away at things, because you would have wasted enormous amount of time and enormous amount of money. So kind of like your earlier application used to say, 10 years ago or 7 years ago, that on your site plan approval was to come in with a preliminary one on a napkin, one on a piece of paper, and come in and test the temperature, test the township to make sure that's what, fits with the ordinance, and it's something that they're going to encourage and like. I think you have to go to the township first, and then you seek the approval of the other agencies. It wouldn't be any different. The state eco permit and the critical dunes is no different than getting a well permit or a septic permit or a building permit. It isn't something that you would go and get building permits for these buildings first and then go seek, the township approval for a site plan. We're simply here for a site plan today, and I can't come up with occupancy or owners because I literally don't have these units available for sale because, number one, I don't know what they're going to cost to build. I don't know when they're going to be done, and I don't exactly know what is going to be on the inside of them because between the labor issues and the supply issues, it's impossible to predict what that's going to look like. So it only makes sense to go for site plan approval and then work your way through the rest of the pieces. And then when you do get them completed, because you need some sort of economies of scale to make this work, you have to build them, and you build them as a shell. And then you identify who the customer is going to be when you get close to the finish line. And then all the other applicable rules and all the other applicable laws apply. It's no different than when I leave North Shore. I have to follow the speed limit. It applies to me and everybody else that would be an owner there. It's the same thing with the well. It's the same thing with the septic. If we don't have enough room on the plan for a septic system, well, then it's our problem. Fortunate for us, we own all the adjoining properties, so we could easily just move property lines and have more property if it was needed. Similar to the setback to the north, we need to have 30 more feet to that property line. Doesn't change my site plan, I just move the property line over 30 feet to the north. There's no way, if you would have seen their earlier emails, there's no way that I can answer the engineer's questions. I can handle the site and the grading plans, and I think that makes all the sense in the world that it needs his approval before we build it. The rest of the stuff, he's asking for things just presuming there's going to be multiple owners. we could get to the end of it in 1 year from now, or a year and a half from now, when I could get it built. And we could be in like an economy of '08, and I end up owning 6 buildings under single ownership that I rent out. And they're all, 1 building a piece with no dividing walls in it, with no bathrooms and no water, because you can use warehousing in a wholesale sales and service business. So similar to the other phases, I do not know what it's going to look like. I can hope what it's going to look like, that it looks similar to what we already built, but I don't know that, and I can't tell you that this evening, and I won't be able to tell you it next month or the month after.
On the site review application and requirements, I don't know if you have that in front of you or not, Scott. But under E, this is just I can't make out what it says. It says state proposed use of property. And it looks, I don't know what that entire thing says.
I'm trying to find the same application. Are you talking about where it's handwritten on the application?
Yeah.
Yeah, your handwritten.
The site plan review application.
Is there any way, Lene, you can pull that up? I don't have that.
I think she's looking for it. There it is. Yeah.
I have the narrative, but I don't have the handwritten application.
Warehouse,
Oh, that's the word that I can't see.
wholesales and service slash. I think it says warehouse.
It's
Oh,
that
we got
last
it
word
said
that we can't
whatever.
read.
Yeah,
Well, I know.
wasn't sure what
I
it.
think it might be warehouse spelled wrong. I don't know.
Correct. It would likely be warehouse, which would be similar to the unit that I'm in. I'm an aircraft dealer, so I buy and sell airplane parts out of my unit. And I do that on a wholesale basis, and it's a warehousing.
Warehouse would make sense.
But it is spelled wrong.
Okay.
Okay, I just wasn't, sorry, I wasn't,
No,
I've been battling with that one for a day.
I think in response to Scott's answer to my question, I mean, the track record in the last 2 years, 28 of 30 units have sold and have new ownership. So especially to the issue of condoization and just,
Condomization.
that's quite a high score
Mhm.
of
I would
success.
think we would be the poster child of your economic development thing for your township there.
Well, we don't know the usages.
Yeah,
I remember when we approved the auto sales, the classic autos, that's great. But is the plan to have 16 more retail businesses, and we're developing a mini mall of some sort? I mean, these are legitimate concerns that we want to,
especially in our
Address.
C1 area.
and the location, yeah.
Yeah,
And they are very high end, so it's doubtful that they're gonna be used as solely warehouse. I wouldn't imagine somebody would pay that
Exactly.
kind of money for a warehouse.
And I also know, Scott, you said you have not seen Chief Janik's letter that we only received today. There's a lot of information in there to consider and digest. And like I said, reading it today, the day of this initial consideration, is challenging and
And-
might need more time and response from both the fire district as well as the applicant. Because he said he's not seen this letter.
Yeah, and as a township, as a planning commission, I suggest that when we read this, I think where Janik was coming from with this letter is more of a township-wide approach to how we review these things, because his concerns are not only with, the North Shore, but it's other storage units similar to this. And the fact that, he has safety concerns, regarding this, like, but somebody potentially sleeping in there, like if you have a setup where, you could have, the opportunity for somebody to maybe overindulge and, fall asleep on a couch and then all of a sudden there's a fire. And the fire department pulls in, and if it's a warehouse or a storage building, they're gonna approach that differently than if they know there's human life in there. So, I mean, that's that's his concern, and it's not just this project, it's, it's,
Right.
it's area wide. And then what was the, I actually, and sorry, Scott, if I'm speaking, I haven't seen this
That's
letter.
right. I just finished reading Janet's letter.
Yeah, I'm just gonna put this out there for just the planning commission, but one of the things that I thought may be a good way to handle some of this going forward is annual inspections, of the properties. Because like Scott said, he doesn't know. I mean, and how can he know? So he opens up, he builds them, makes them available, people purchase them. And then once they purchase them, what control does he have? And so.
Let me throw a question out, Dave, on that.
Yes.
Maybe it's a bad example, but if you're building a housing development, and you're gonna sell those houses, you can have a homeowners association or some other kind of bylaws to regulate what goes on in those homes with regard to improvements and additions and all that kind of thing. There's plenty of, where I live, there's a long list of stuff. So why couldn't you, when you either sell or lease these properties, to control what goes on in there and say, hey, if I'm gonna sell you this property, it's gotta, owners have to abide by a set of regulations with regard to what goes on in those buildings. And it seemed like that would be a logical thing to do to protect everybody, all of your customers to own the buildings as to, what can happen. So if you just want to like store something versus somebody doing some major overhaul and painting and that kind of thing, there's some protection with regard to the neighbors in the other adjacent buildings as well as the neighborhood. So if Scott, just one last comment, just so I can understand what you were saying earlier, and just for understanding. So the way you're marketing this is you're going to build like a shell, get that done, and then at that time, looking at market conditions, you're going to make a decision as to how much further you want to develop those buildings, if you're going to sell them or rent them, that kind of thing. So the first thing is to get the shell up and then put together a business plan with regard to how you want to address the thing moving forward. Is that about right?
That's exactly right. What happens in the world that we're living in here, I cannot build one building at a time under the economies of scale and build it and be able to sell it and turn out this high end of a building and this product and meet a certain demand that appears to be here. But I want to make one more comment here. I read Janek's letter here while we were talking. Janek's letter doesn't really, I don't think is pointed directly at us. He's saying, that if sleeping were allowed, well, it's C1 district. This is not a residential community. Sleeping and overnight living is not allowed here. It's not a residential development. Our condominium documents for the first two phases clearly identify that, you'll meet all and exceed all state and federal laws and guidelines. It's not a residential development. It's not allowed. It's not something that can be there. And he's just saying, hey, if, actually it says if sleeping were to be allowed, then that would be, if you guys want to overlook the C1 district and make an exception tonight and say that this can be a live, sleep, work thing, which I'm not asking you to do, then some of his letter would be applicable, but his letter is not applicable to what we're asking for this evening or what we've already completed at this project.
Do you believe some of these spaces are used for offices?
Almost definitely.
Okay. And so they have kitchens?
I have a kitchen in my office, but I've had a kitchen in every office I've owned out of the last 6 of them for the last 30 years. But I've had offices in loft buildings, for the last 30 years. In fact, most of my offices have a pool table in them still. But it's how different people work and different people, conduct business.
So as you market these, let's set the sleeping over thing aside, put that over in the corner for a minute. It's logical, what I'm hearing, it's logical to expect somebody to have a range of use from just storing something and walking away from it and coming and visit it every so often, to somebody might have run a business, or at least have a second office in these spaces, and have need for a bathroom facilities and a small kitchen, heating and air conditioning, that kind of thing, and not be living in it.
Right, that's exactly what happened. I mean, originally we assumed that would be like a plumber or a heating and cooling person that was going to use it as wholesale sales and service, and he would drive up and he'd pick up his supplies for the day. He wouldn't need a bathroom, he wouldn't need water, and he would leave. And then I built my unit out and I wanted water and a bathroom and whatnot, because I was selling airplane parts out of my unit, and I want to use the bathroom and I want to make lunch, and I have other business interests and other things going on, and I want to have a media and a big screen on the wall that I can have a meeting around a table and correlate and communicate with other people and design plans and come up with things. So that's the office type of environment that I work in. So that's what I built to fit what I do. And other people, do the same.
Lene, I have a question for you. I don't know if this is right, but the property surrounding Commercial Boulevard is zoned residential 1. Is that correct?
I believe it's R1, yeah.
I'm just wondering about the buffer right now. Is that a sufficient buffer between C1 and R1? Because you're talking about 20 feet on one side and then 21 feet and 8 inches on the other side. Does it have to be a larger buffer if you're talking about commercial property bordering residential?
It has to be 50 feet.
Yeah.
It's what the ordinance would require, 50 feet. I think it's just the rear yard.
Okay.
It's 20 feet on side yards and rear yards, except when you're next to R1, and then when you're next to R1, rear yards turn into 50 feet. So the building furthest to the north requires a 50-foot setback.
So you're thinking the east side or the west side only requires 20 versus 50?
Yeah, our ordinance doesn't say that all setbacks go to 50 adjacent to residential, only the rear.
Okay.
Where is this in location to the wellhead?
The wellhead is over by the, which is down the road on 135th, but you don't have a wellhead there. That's a proposed wellhead.
Okay.
I wonder if we could, I'm hearing just some different feelings in our ordinance. We do have standards for site plan review. And there's 6 standards, and they're basically those things outlined in the staff report. And if the commission feels like they need additional information or some other way to ensure that they can find that these standards are met, then I think we should go through those or discuss those. I don't know if anyone has their ordinance book open. It's section 40-816.
More questions for Scott or Mike?
Yeah, Scott's Mike Worth, just trying to understand your concept for constructing these buildings and marketing them. When you get the shell built, correct me if I'm wrong, don't you need to have an idea of whether or not you're going to have drains and water at least, so you can fill that in before you pour floors, or is that, am I ahead of myself here?
You're a little ahead of yourself. What
Okay.
happens in the world today anyways is if they don't put floor drains anymore, everybody just slopes the floor towards the garage door if they want any drainage at all. or they just put a flat floor in. But when I say you're building a shell, you don't, it's no different than building, you know, a strip mall or building, you know, a mixed use building where you have commercial on the bottom and residential above. Quite often you build the residential out, you shell the whole thing in, but you never put the floor in the commercial area because you're waiting for Subway or Chick-fil-A or Starbucks or somebody to come in and design it so that you can put your actual plumbing and stuff in the ground. And in this case, if you don't know who the customer is, you wouldn't do that. You would just put the shells up. They would look complete. You'd build your landscape in your retention areas. You'd seed the thing, sprinkle it, plant your trees, put your parking lot in, and then you figure out what's going on the inside.
Okay, thank you.
So you don't ever need to have a split drain?
What would, I don't know what the split drain is.
If you have car materials in there, anything like oil,
Oh, like an
Or-
oil
Okay,
separator.
a triple catch basin, yeah.
Yeah, if somebody came in and said, hey, I'm gonna build a service facility, if Eiley said, which I'm not saying, we don't want to start a rumor. Let's say a service facility said they wanted to be in one of these buildings, and I don't even know if that's an approved use by C1, and it was automotive, they would come in and they would come in with a site plan. They would be back in front of you guys, and you guys would say, oh, do you have floor drains? And he goes, oh yeah, we'll need a floor drain. And then a floor drain, he would have to go to Eagle and Allegan County to get approval, and then that would require an oil separator. Like, I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then a oil separator monitoring plan, and et cetera, et cetera. But that's putting the cart way before the horse in this particular case.
I mean, something that I'm struggling with is I understand that there's no, there's no way to definitely know what the use is. But on our end, we definitely know that this project is located within the groundwater protection overlay district. And we definitely know that it's right by a site that we've identified as a potential wellhead. And so we know that you don't know what your future land use is, but we know that there is a heightened necessity to make sure that whatever goes into that space doesn't have the potential to contaminate the well water. And that's not just for the township. I think it's also a concern for you. We wouldn't want something like that to happen to your property, and you have, that burden that would be shared by all of us. So that's where I'm really kind of struggling with this, that I know that we can't foresee that future land use. I could say that we have a pretty good insight into how people are using the units. And I would say that we as a township have to take the necessary precautions to protect you as a developer and to protect our community's water.
But wouldn't that be taken up, those issues be taken up at the second phase of this, once he's got the shell up? And then when the owner or Scott comes in and say, okay, I want to turn this particular building into X use, and then all those issues can be addressed before anything happens.
I don't trust that. I think it has to come out first. I feel that way. I feel like that's the way that the properties are being used presently. I can anticipate that's the way some of those properties are going to be used in the future, knowing that I think it's somewhat unconscionable not to address it now.
Daniel?
Yes, Scott.
Let's unpack that a minute here. So let's just say we knew that ABC was moving into one space, and today we could write that on this plan and I could bring it to you. We don't know that ABC doesn't sell that a year from now because they don't either like Saugatuck or it didn't work out, and they sell it to XYZ and they come in and do something different. That doesn't mean that they're back in front of you, but what is the guiding principle here is everybody realizes there is a ground.
Scott, you're gone.
We lost you.
All right, am I back?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. The groundwater protection overlay is, it's an overlay that's already on this property. It would apply to every renter, to every owner in the future, or not.
Scott, you're gone again. We can't hear you.
Sorry, how about now?
Yes.
All right, the groundwater protection overlay would apply to any renter or buyer, either present or in the future. The C1 zoning applies to every renter, every buyer, whether they're current or whether they're in the future. It wouldn't make any difference whether I knew who they were today or whether I knew who they are 10 years from now. The overlay and the protections all apply. And I think I had heard somebody say something about annual inspections. I think the fire department in C1 already has an annual inspection thing at all properties. Or at least that's what Chris Mantos told me the other day when we were doing fire extinguisher inspections.
That's fine.
I
Scott,
guess, Scott, if these were to be condoed later, and this is what I was getting at in one of the conditions, asking for your master deed and bylaws from the first two phases. You know, would you be willing to come back in for a site condo process and review and have the planning commission weigh in on your master deed and bylaws, and maybe those bylaws stipulate these things about hazardous materials, about residential or overnight?
Right. Well, I mean, let's even unpack that. I mean, and I don't have a problem, you know, coming back and looking at it, other than it's a little curious to go ahead and build 6 buildings with the idea that I'm coming back to the township to instill what controls they would like to be on the property at that time period. I mean, I would think that people that would buy a unit and that would come in like the car guy and he'd come in for site plan approval or whatever, you would put conditions on him for his particular use. I think, again, the ground protection overlay rules the day, and your C1 district rules the day. It's just tough for me to identify. It's not like your earlier applicant that came in that is going to be a single use. They know who they are and what they want to be, you know, when they grow up, and they can come in and say, I'm doing this business now. If they build the building and they move out of there 2 years from now, and Subway comes in and wants to have, you know, sub sandwiches there, I'm assuming they end up back in front of you guys again to, you know, talk about curb cuts and drive through and car number counts, et cetera. And I'm guessing the fire department comes through to make sure again that they meet fire approval. And I'm assuming Allegan County and the health department and everybody else would be applicable, that they have the right number of toilets in there and et cetera for the use. I just think we're getting in the weeds here because we're looking for approval for 6 buildings that at this point are going to be C1. I've listed a use that I believe would be a use that would conform with no water and no sewer. But if it changes, then we would go visit at Allegan County and Eagle and get the appropriate permits for sewer. And we would work with Cal Lakes just like we did in the earlier phases and pay the tap fees to the township and put water in the ones that mattered, which may be 1, maybe some, maybe none.
Do you know how many units have added toilets or water and septic?
I do, because I actually didn't want people to build them out, so we permitted all of the bathrooms individually and built all of the bathrooms out. Oh,
I'm
how
sorry,
many?
we couldn't hear you.
Oh, I do know how many, because any of the improvements so far that have happened over there, I have permitted and built out. So I believe we put in 22, 3, 4. I think we put in 24 bathrooms.
Out of 30 units. Wouldn't it be safe to assume that that many people are going to want water service to their future units?
30.
I would like to say that I hope that's what the case is, but I almost feel like our success was fueled a bit by COVID. And I don't know that it'll be like that a year from now. In fact, I'm very cautious that it will be anywhere close to this a year or a year and a half from now. I think there was.
Scott, I've been looking at, and Lene, and certainly if I'm stepping out of, if I'm saying something incorrect, please correct me, is that in the letter from our engineer, it says the site plan does not contain the level of detail required by our ordinance, section 4813. And as I looked at our ordinance, section 813, it does talk about location and size of uses of existing and proposed buildings, which you have, but they also talked about location of a number, oh, I just saw it. Well, whether we have an appropriate landscaping plan. I don't see it. Yes, I see that you have areas indicated that where you might get some trees and so forth, but is that sufficient? And as I look at some of our different site plans that we've done, we want more detail. And number 5 of that, location, availability, and compatibility of all existing and proposed water lines, shut-off valves, sewers, septic tanks. Well, I don't see the existing. In other words, I see you have existing buildings, but I don't see the existing water lines and septic and so forth. So it really comes back to, do we have an adequate site plan? Both from existing as well as what you're proposing, and I don't see that.
Well, I think, ma'am, what they're asking or talking about is they're on the phase that we're actually doing, which would be phase 3, is they're asking, it's typically existing contours, existing water, existing sewer. In phase 3, there is no existing water. There is no existing sewer. I only put the first 2 phases on there so that it would help you guys identify where this new part of the project is. That's why I shaded them gray and put them on the plan, so that if you hadn't stopped by the site and I hadn't toured you before, that you'd be able to place it compared to the remaining buildings that are there.
Is this all under the same parcel number?
No, it's not.
Different parcel number?
It is.
I have to really go with our engineer. I'm sorry. Is that if they don't feel that there's enough detail in the site plan that we're giving, even in your proposal 3, I've got a real issue with that. And that we should be able to see in more detail of what's going on. And then able to put on that rather than saying, okay, no, you need this, you need this, you need this, you need this, and you need this. Well, it should already be there. I shouldn't see that much and put that many conditions on this.
Well, and I appreciate what you're saying, and that's why I wanted to go through with your engineer's requirements, because the requirements for your engineer is hyphened on the fact that I am going to have water and I'm going to have sewer. And at this point, it is not on the plans. So asking us to put them on the plans when we don't propose them is not a correct comment to be on your engineer's review.
Well, apparently we have a really disagreement here.
Yeah, we have.
And I can appreciate
We are
that.
asking our engineers to do, and
Right.
as you look through the whole thing, and we got this whole site plan review and so forth, it's like, okay, I just don't see it.
Well, okay, well, let's take one of the items. One of the items was that all water lines should be shown. So if you would like me to come back next month and follow the review of your engineer, I don't propose any water lines. So what would you propose me to change on the plan?
However, your phase 1 and phase 2, you have water lines. So therefore, thinking of the future, it is likely those units will get water. So tell us where you would put them. If that was going to be actually going to happen, again, the past tells us what's going to happen likely in the future. Where would you propose those water lines to be?
I would take it up with Kale Lakes, and Darrow and I would go over it and use your township engineers at that time, go over it and decide where the water lines would be. But at this point, we don't propose any. And I don't know what the market will be, as I told you before. The
But
demand.
it sounds like all of
We're
your
just going around in
units
the
have
circle.
it, so we're asking for it. It sounds like we're asking for it.
And I'm not proposing it. So where would you propose me to put them?
That's up to you.
Exactly.
Mhm. Well, I'm just wondering, is there any more comments? It sounds like we're not ready to approve this project at this time. That's what I'm sensing.
Yeah.
Very clearly, maybe you should lay out the conditions why you're not approving it.
I can't hear him.
He said layout conditions as to why we would not approve it. But can't we simply table for more information?
Yes, we
And then-
can, but I think why we won't approve it is probably because of all the questions we've asked this evening that that kind of pertain to our engineer's report and many other things that we've asked this evening. So I think we'll have detailed minutes and we can lay out a lot of those concerns to you. But I'm not sure, is that your feeling? And I think that probably the number one piece is actually that you are proposing this in a critical dune area. And I really feel like we have to be responsive to our community and this is not something that we would normally do first. It would be to get get Eagle to weigh in first. And
That actually, but I mean, let's just say I go to Eagle and Eagle does not approve it, then obviously I'm back in front of you with a
for
different
the new
plan.
project.
Right.
Yep, and that's fine.
Scott, the other thing we don't see on here is the existing topography. We don't see a grading plan. We don't see that. I just don't see that.
And how are you gonna?
And
water the
appropriate
grass?
landscape, I'm a little leery on that too. And the appropriate setbacks and there's a lot of things to, in this, what you propose. Now, I'm not saying that this is not necessarily a good project. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is the site plan doesn't give us enough information to approve your plan.
I think it would be helpful if we could list out some of the things if whoever is thinking of making whatever motion, so that Scott has some direction moving forward. And certainly those standards for granting site approval mention, you as a planning commission feeling like you have enough information to know that the topography, once it's built, will be in harmony with adjacent areas, that stormwater management preserves natural drainage characteristics. If you don't have enough information to be able to make these determinations, all of these determinations, then, that can guide you right now as you're making a motion. And I guess I would just encourage you to help provide staff and the applicant with some direction so that when they come back, they're meeting your needs. So if you'd like an Eagle permit first, I think it would be good to say that, right? If you'd like to have a grading and drainage plan with topography, I think that would be good to say. If you'd like to have a separate landscape plan that, calls out plant materials and the height of those materials and, all the requirements in our ordinance, I think say that I'm just offering some guidance.
Okay, so Scott, at this point, do you understand where we're coming from? Well, you probably don't because there's been a lot of discussion. Is that, would you rather have us postpone this review and then have more in-length discussion? Due to the fact that there does not seem to be, as our engineer does not contain the level of detail. And if we
Yeah, I
look at
think-
our ordinance, section 4813, I think that's pretty self-explanatory in the type of detail that's required for a site plan.
Yeah, I think as an applicant, I'm asking you to approve the plan as it's presented with the conditions that Lene has already laid out, with any additional ones that you would be willing to consider. And if you're not willing to approve it, I guess we'd like to hear the conditions or the reasons why you're not approving it. And if you believe it's short on some conditions or on some items, we'd like to hear what those are. We'd obviously like to do a better job. So if we miss something that you believe is necessary, we'd like it identified.
so.
I just went through the site plan content requirements, section 4813.
Correct.
Quickly. And what I see that I don't believe is fully detailed on the site plan would be item number 6, elevation and location of existing stormwater drainage courses, county drains, associated bodies of water on site and within 150 feet of the site. Number 7, location of existing natural resource features, including slopes greater than 10%, woodlands, ground cover, and wetlands. Number 8, existing topography with a maximum contour interval of 2 feet on the parcel and beyond the parcel for a distance of 150 feet in all directions. Number 9, a grading plan showing finished contours at maximum interval of 2 feet. And I understanding it's mostly flat, but it is near dunes. As to clearly indicate required cutting, filling, and grading. Number 10, soil characteristics of the parcel and 150 feet beyond the parcel in all directions, at least to the detail provided by the United States Department of Agriculture, Natural Resources, Conservation Service, current soil survey of Allegan County, delineation of the 100-year floodplain and any existing or proposed uses therein. 11, identification of existing trees and vegetation to be preserved. 12, a landscape plan showing screening, green belts, buffering, and fences with reference to type of materials, dimension, and character. 14, elevations and details of proposed ditches and stormwater drainage courses, associated bodies of water on the site and within 150 feet of the site. And 20, stormwater control facilities and structures. Well, you're working on that, I believe, right now.
Yeah, I believe all of the items that you mentioned relate to a stormwater plan, which
Yeah.
are one of the conditions that we obviously would meet your engineer's expectations and approval.
So what I
prior to-
do see are like maybe 7 items that were not met on the site plan.
Same with the same, number 13, in regards to refuge and surface
Refuse.
areas, trash receptacles. I'm depending on, thinking about what you're doing in there, you're going to have the receptacles. So where are they? Where do you propose those to be?
There are no trash receptacles on the property. All trash is done with a Herbie cart, which is kept indoors except for pickup day, just like the earlier phases.
But you don't know the use. So if you don't know the use of the project, how do you know there will not be any receptacle needs?
Because that's what is allowed in our condo docs, and that's what's allowed on your site plan approval. There's no outside storage. There's no outside waste containers on this plan, so there will be none.
So you do have condo docs.
Correct. Not for this phase, but for earlier phases, but that's how you would control what's going on. We don't allow it in the site plan, and that's what we're asking for your approval. It does not show any septic systems, or excuse me, any collective waste systems outdoors, and so there will be none.
Do we have a copy of the condo docs on file?
There
We
are
do.
no condo docs for this phase.
Not for the
For 1
previous
and 2?
phases. That's why I included that in my memo and those recommendations.
Okay, so are we making our list right now? I just think we have a lot of questions, so can we get our list back to Lene? And she could forward that to you, because I think we have a lot of questions, and the conversation was very helpful. But I still think there's a lot of questions, Scott. And I think there's a lot of sentiment that we need to go for Eagle approval first. And then proceed from there.
But
Is
here's
that
the
right?
problem, and this is why it doesn't work good that way, is when you go to Eagle for an approval or the Army Corps, you have to go very specific, just like the state. So if
Well,
I go
you're
with this
supposed
site
to be
plan for
specific here.
approval and they approve it, and then I come back to you, you can't change it without me reapplying to Eagle and doing it all over again.
I see.
And when you go into a critical dune permit, you permit, these buildings, there's probably 3 of the buildings that are in the critical dunes and some wastewater retention and parking lot. You're very specific. You're down to very specific, like the landscaping that's shown on here and the identification of the trees. You can't be more, you can't be less, you can't be different, you can't be in a different spot. If I go for Eagle permit and I get a permit, which may take 30 or 45 days or less, once it's done, you can't change it. That's why you come usually to the township or the city first to get site plan approval so that you can go through the rest of the pieces. And if they make you change it, then you come back to the township to get a site plan approval or an amendment because you had to move one of the buildings or you had to change the parking lot or do something else.
So given a relatively short time frame, 2, 3, 4 months, why not get Scott to address the issues that were delineated and get those out to him, have him a chance to respond. And then if he makes any adjustment to this proposed site plan, which sounds like it needs to be improved or added to, once that's done, then he can go and get his Eagle permit and with a lower risk of having to do it all over again. Sounds fair.
But Scott, are you already in for your Eagle permit?
I'm not, because what happens is we met Eagle on the site, back in 17 or whatever to walk the critical dune line. And when they established that critical dune line back in, I don't remember what it was, the 50s or something, they didn't have, the maps and the technology that they do today. The dune line does not follow the dune very well. And so we moved the dune line around up front on the property, up along the channel and along the seawall area where the proposed marina is to actually meet the critical dunes. And that same thing may happen here. It's possible they could decide to move the dune line over to the dune where none of these buildings or none of the things in front of you today would actually be in the critical dunes. But that's a decision that they have to
That's
make
true.
internally. by
That'd make it a lot
statute.
easier.
Do it.
That makes sense. Yeah.
That's true. It would make it a lot easier. Okay,
But I mean, I do have to admit that anything we seem to do seems to be a bit of a lightning rod, so they may be reluctant to move it even though statute allows them, and they may ask me to permit it. And to tell you the truth, it doesn't really matter to me one way or another. It's just another permit and another application.
Scott, we're a really small township and we don't like to back into projects. And I think that one of our goals for the future is to approach things very sensibly and also to bring in engineers, experts, and people associated with land use in order to help us make decisions for all projects in the future. So I'm not quite comfortable with this in saying, well, let's just, not worry about Eagle and let's just go forward. And I feel like I have to be very responsible to the people in this community who have come before us every single month and have really invested their heart and soul. As you heard one person tonight come in and talk about how much he loves being here. And I think we all share that very much. And we want you to share that too. And so we're hoping you'll work with us. But I do think that this project is not ready for us to be approved at this point. And so I think what we have to do is decide what our next steps are. So commissioners, what would you suggest?
Well, we certainly outlined a lot of things that we think from a site plan, a review of a site plan. I guess that, the issue of the critical dunes and which comes first, comes second is probably still needs to be discussed. And I get his point of view as well. And where we need to do, but from a site plan, if I would just look at the site plan, I'm really still concerned that we don't have that level of detail that we are asking from site plan. So, and we've outlined several of the points. Commissioner Brown brought them up. So if we would have that, I would probably make a motion to postpone. To go, give you the chance to redo your site plan, to meet our level of detail that is needed so that we
With
can
our
move
engineer
forward.
fire.
So that would be my suggestion.
Sure. I understand that. Here's still my fear though, is let's just say we give you a plan that has all of the calculations for stormwater on it, and we give you the math to figure stormwater and 100-year flood. Number one, I couldn't tell you whether those numbers are accurate and how to calculate that, or whether a plan meets it or not. And I've been doing this for 30 some years at this point. And I don't know that you have an engineer on the staff there, because I don't know all your planning commission members, but I know that your township engineer has people on staff that can figure that out. So that's typically something that we would leave to them, and we would make sure that it has their blessing or approval on it before we would build it. But I mean, we can show it to you, but I don't know, again, that it makes any difference. I mean, it'll show a lot of detail and it'll look pretty, to an engineer. But again, unpacking it,
Isn't the requirement in regards to storm water drainage and so forth, the requirement of the applicant? That they have to show it to us, then we check to make sure it's accurate?
Yeah, that's what's in our, in that site plan checklist.
So that you would have to, Mr. Brasscott, you would have to then find an engineer, you would have to find the engineer so that they were able to accurately place it on your site plan.
correct. And we
Did I say
are
that
proposing
correctly?
it. Yeah, and we're proposing to do that. It's just that the person that would look at that and review it and approve it would be the township's engineer, the one that, does the work for the township that we typically get a bill for and pay for. He would review it and make sure that they're accurate before you would get approval to build it.
That is correct. You supplied us the information and then we check the accuracy of it.
We review it.
Right.
That's how it works.
Yeah, and that's a condition that's on Lene's.
Yeah,
one of-
it's a condition because we didn't have it, but
We don't have it.
so listed
have it.
as a requirement for site plan that,
That's my suggestion at this point, is that I would be okay with a postponement in order to have the site plan brought up and specifically to meet our standards. But if that's not what you feel that you can do, Scott, then I would do a motion to I'm not going to approve it. I'm going to what we're doing, what do we use? Reject,
On the table.
not approve,
To not approve.
not approve your site plan. So I'm giving you as the applicant the opportunity to weigh in here. Do you want us to postpone so that we have an appropriate site plan, or do you want us to vote to not approve?
I mean, obviously, the planning commission is welcome to do whatever they would want. As an applicant, as we were asking you to approve the plan with a condition that it meets the stormwater.
No,
project.
no, sir, you're not listening. I'm not willing to put it, well, I'm not, I don't know about the rest of the commissioners, but I'm not willing to put the conditions on there because we have some issues with that. Sometimes we aren't able to, as a township, we've talked about this, to continue to put conditions on a whole list of these conditions on a site plan. I'm sorry, I disagree with that.
I do too.
Same.
And why don't we send him a copy of 40.813?
Well, I'm sure he's already has it, but
I
yes, I
don't
would
know. He
agree.
keeps wanting
Available
us
on
to
the
make them
website.
Yeah,
conditions.
we'd be
These are
happy.
minimal requirements for the plan.
Yeah,
They're
we
not
have to,
conditions.
Ford, Lene, we can give him Ford, he
Yeah,
probably
that's
already has
fine.
it, doesn't he?
yep, he does, yes.
Or, yeah, his engineer will.
Yep.
So
Hearing-
Scott, you already have our, what we require.
Pardon me?
So it sounds like you want that all up front,
Yes,
especially numbers
So
6,
that's not our job.
9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 20.
yes,
As well as I heard the condo documents from phase 1 and 2.
Yes, that'd be very helpful.
Yes.
Your consensus on that Eagle permit.
Yes.
What is the
And we
consensus
want
on
people.
Eagle?
So then
I have a
I,
suggestion.
Go ahead.
I had another thought, because, this is a lot of like, and I know Lene did speak with Eagle, and this is a lot of back and forth, and maybe we should talk to a representative from Eagle on the phone and ask them our questions about the process, so we have a better idea of whether or not it's reasonable for us to have a requirement that an applicant always get Eagle approval beforehand.
Well, and that
Oh,
might be a
I did.
secondary thing, but
And that's what I mean, is
I did.
I thought we had that information.
Yeah.
And some townships do require it and others do it the
So
way
that-
it's been done in the past here.
Okay.
yeah, so then
Isn't it?
therefore, I think that is a question that we
Secondary.
need to probably address in and by itself, but right now, it's about your site plan, and your site plan is not adequate. Let's forget the Eagle for right now, but your site plan.
And the information that we have.
So Scott, again, I'm gonna ask you the question. Do you want us to just postpone so that you're able to furnish a site plan that meets all our requirements, or we would go to, well, my motion would be not approved.
Well, yeah, I think you can have a motion to postpone it. But I don't know that.
I
that's-
move to postpone this site plan review to allow the applicant to meet the requirements of our section in our zoning ordinance, section 4813, in regards to a site plan.
Specifically items number 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, and
That's
20.
it.
All of them apply.
All of them apply,
All of them apply.
but we've specifically
Right.
called out several different ones, but make sure that you apply all and look at that, all the requirements. That's my motion,
Also engineering, fire, what doesn't matter, that's all part of
all part of it.
it. Okay. Moved by Webster,
I'll second.
supported by Eiley. I think at this time, is there any more discussion, any more comments? And I will do a roll call vote. Eiley,
Yes.
Helmrich,
Yes.
DeFranco,
Abstain.
Ground,
Yes.
Webster,
Yes,
Worth,
Yes.
Israel's yes. So 6 yes and 1 abstain. Motion passed. Thank you. Everyone. Got a lot of notes. Okay,
but lady, do you understand everything?
yeah, I sure do. I sure.
Okay,
I think I'll also ask Scott to just modify that that verbiage on the application that we couldn't read. That did say warehouse, just because warehouses are not allowed in C1. So he can just come in and cross that off.
thank you.
thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is the historic district follow-up and natural river overlay discussion. I think Lene, you wanted to address this?
Yeah, last Tuesday, when I was in the office preparing the packet, John mentioned that at the board meeting, there was an overview of the historic district, and a question that came out of the board meeting was related to our natural river overlay elements of the zoning ordinance. And John, I know we didn't have a long time to talk, but I understood that you and the board were wanting just kind of an overview of what's in that overlay. And then, the thought was, can that overlay change? Can the boundaries change? Can the language change? And so I took a look at it, and admittedly, I hadn't spent a lot of time with this because since I've been there, I haven't seen any permits. At least the previous building inspector didn't share any permits for any projects that were in that buffer area. So it was a good opportunity to take a look at it. So I just did a really quick overview. There is more detail in the ordinance, but I just thought I would share with you what the ordinance says. I don't know that that's even help. I don't think that helps.
I have that?
We don't have that. do
We don't have that, Lene.
Oh, you don't see my screen?
Yeah.
No, we
don't
see
have
your
the
screen.
document.
We don't have that document. If you want to email it to me real quick, I'll print copies.
No, you don't. Of course you don't have that document because I just got the assignment last week.
It's brand new.
Together.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood that.
We have
Yeah,
a fact sheet, but. this
I
is-
mean, I didn't,
Okay, I'm sorry, Lene. I'm like, oh, wow, okay.
and now I lost it. Yes, so you don't have this document. For
Open Word back up. It should be in your history, your recent history.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a better layout here, paper layout. Okay. So that's why I will send it, but it is just something that I worked on today. All right, so the river overlay, it's in your zoning ordinance. So it's two things. It's a mapped boundary and it's also written language.
What section is that? What section?
Yep, 40-591.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yep, so the overlay, it's a 300-foot wide buffer on either side of the Kalamazoo River, the main river and the tributary channels. But the boundary is not, East Township boundary all the way to the west. The boundary is from the East Township boundary line to the Hacklander public access. And I looked up where that Hacklander public access is, and it's basically at 63rd. Okay, so does that, let's see, here's the zoning map. I don't know if you see that. Can you see that?
Yep.
So I am really toggling like crazy today.
Yes.
I don't know. Unfortunately, the county website does not have our overlay boundary on it. But here's 63rd. Right here where my cursor is. Here's Douglas. So here's 63rd. So the overlay is everything east of this to the township boundary line. Okay. So what's in the overlay? Well, the overlay stipulates the lot width for single family homes. It stipulates the uses. So the basic principal use that's allowed in the overlay is single family homes and accessory buildings. So that would be like garages and, other uses within this 300 feet, of the river and tributaries would be crop farms, home occupations, campgrounds, sales, service, or rental of recreational watercraft, and rental cabins. And all of those uses have to conform to our setbacks. And the setbacks specific to that 300-foot overlay would be 200 feet from the river's edge, but we can reduce that 3 feet for every vertical foot above the high water mark. And I don't know where the high water mark is. That would be determined by a survey. They would have to come in with a survey that shows that level of information. And then we could look at reducing the setbacks. In no instance should the setback be less than 75 feet in that overlay. It also states that construction is not permitted if land is subject to flooding. And if you look at the language in there, there's some specific text about flooding and what flooding means. And basically flooding and the likelihood of flooding would be determined again by elevations and a survey and I believe like FEMA definitions of the different flood floodplain. Yeah, floodplain. What can you do in there? You can also have docks. You can access the water. It does stipulate that docks have to conform to Article 7 in our zoning ordinance, water access and docks. They also have to get a state permit. You have to provide, septic. It has to be reviewed by the county health department if you're building a house there. Agriculture, if you're doing ag, we want to see a plan for animal waste, for containment of that waste. We don't allow junk, a dump, a landfill, any of that within the overlay. Land alteration, you can grade, you can dredge, you can fill. But if the water table is within 6 feet of the land surface or the land is subject to flooding, then you can't do that without permits. And it may be that you cannot do it at all. It just depends. There's a required vegetative strip. 50 feet of depth along that river's edge is to be maintained and enhanced. And if a building permit comes in for something in that overlay, I, as zoning administrator, have to notify the applicant that we have this vegetated strip requirement. They can remove dead or dying trees, invasive species. You can also trim to have a filtered view. We don't allow mineral or gas or oil exploration. And then it reverts back to the Natural River Act, which is a federal, state, I think federal act that applies to this portion of the river as well. You cannot dam it, dredge it, channelize, or fill this area without approval from the state and in accordance with the Inland Lakes and Streams Act. If you stabilize the banks, you have to use natural materials, and you have to get a permit if you're working below the ordinary high water mark. You can, if someone is going in, even like in the adjacent to the water near the river, and they're removing fallen trees, those property owners have to be notified, and or the owner of the river, which I believe will be the state. So that's kind of an overview of this natural river overlay. It corresponds to the state's, and maybe federal, I'd have to check, designation of this portion of the river as a wild scenic river. It's designated as that, and I think the Natural River Act gives the state and maybe the federal government, but for sure the state, the ability to designate it as such. And so our overlay, I believe, was created to acknowledge that we have this wild and scenic river. This portion of the river is wild and scenic. And because of that, we want to have our own local protections to kind of honor that designation and do what we can from a land use perspective to kind of protect those characteristics that make it wild and scenic. Does that make sense? So then I just wanted to let you know, if you want to amend the overlay, a couple things that come to mind. Like if this is in place in this portion of the township because it's wild and scenic, I would think that if we were changing the boundary, we would want to make sure that other portions of the river meet that definition, if there is one, of what wild and scenic means. Because that's kind of the basis for this natural river overlay. Things like uses that are allowed or setbacks, or even some of these other characteristics like, setbacks and the dredging and the sanitation and agriculture and things like that. I mean, we could include other standards or different standards, depending on, the desire and the intent. Any want to have reviewed by the attorney, of course. And I also think it's important to note in the scope in our ordinance for this natural river overlay, there's language that says that the establishment of this overlay district in no way implies a taking of these lands by the state or the township, or the opening of such lands to public use. Private lands shall remain private and are subject to all rights of private ownership. So I just thought that was interesting that it seems to me that when this was written, it was written kind of acknowledging that people do have property rights, but that this was our best way to make sure that, again, these characteristics that make this portion of the river wild and scenic are maintained to the extent that we can control them via land use and zoning. That's all I got.
Wow, thank you.
Did you want to add?
Yeah, again, it's, please review the ordinance, but I'll PDF this right now and send it over.
Is this a goal of the rural character? Is why we're even discussing this at this point? I'm a little confused.
The board made a request at the February board meeting.
So the board, you'll remember this. So the board asked us to review the advantages and disadvantages of establishing a local historic district.
Correct, I understand that.
So when I wrote my report, I also wanted to consider next steps that the township could potentially take. Now, one of the options is move forward with an historic district. The other option was that if we move forward with a local historic district for the river, well, then maybe some of the standards that we would use to judge whether or not development was appropriate might overlap with the requirements that are already listed for this natural river overlay district. So a suggestion was, as opposed to going about and establishing a new commission, maybe the township board would consider extending or modifying the boundaries of the natural river overlay district, and it would give you something comparable to a local historic district in terms of preservation goals. So that was a recommendation
So
in my
I'm still
report.
confused as are they asking us
Yes.
to review this overlay
Yes.
in much more detail?
Yes.
So this is just the introduction of be ready that we need to review it?
Yeah, so a project that could potentially, come up for review from rural character could be, do we want to extend or modify the boundaries of the existing natural river overlay district?
And what happened at the
Okay.
board meeting? No, this is important. This is board action. The board acknowledged and thanked Mr. DeFranco for
Sure.
his excellent 20-page overview,
Yep.
which is what the board requested last spring. Then, because of the issue of a potential expansion or redefinition of the natural river overlay that already exists, the board requested that Planning Commission or one of its advisory committees report back to us on potential areas to extend it to and what would be entailed to do that.
When you say us,
The board,
us, the planning commission, or is us, the board,
The
township board?
the board.
The township board.
This was a formal
Okay,
request from that us, not this us.
So the thing is, where I'm getting a little confused in regards to what's going on is that some of these things are happening, but then you come to this meeting and all of a sudden, okay, we talked about historic district. I get that.
Yeah.
But now Lene, nice work, Lene, is presenting this and it's like, what are you guys talking about? I mean, we didn't even have a chance to have a review of what it is that we're talking about. So you come to this meeting, it's like, oh,
Well, it's follow up to the submission of the historic district report.
It did have.
did we have that report? I don't remember reading that 20-page report.
No, I haven't, I
didn't.
gave it right to the board.
Okay, so my also confusion is I've not seen that 20-page report.
Well,
So my comment is just strictly that here you're sitting here, it's like, what are you guys talking about? If you want something from the board, the commissioners on this board to have any,
well, that's why it's an agenda item tonight.
yeah, but we didn't have any preclude to it. In other words, I didn't even have a chance to study it, to understand, to give you any type of recommendation.
I understand.
It's like, wow. So
I
that's my
understand
only
what you're
comment.
Okay, no, that's fair.
I get it, because I'm fully supportive of this, but
No, I hear you. And
Yes.
I agree that, it was quick and that you all, and I acknowledge that you all did not get that
Yeah.
report.
I didn't know that we were even supposed to look at this overlay to understand what Lene nicely put. It was like,
Well,
wow.
again, that is why it's an item today.
Yeah, tonight, I
That's-
guess.
That was the
it's just
response from the board was, thank you for this excellent report. Can we get more information on the river, natural river overlay? And that's where we're at now is
I get it,
asking, asking us, planning commission, to provide more.
I would not be able to do any action. I would not vote on any action because you don't have the 20-page report and you don't have Lene's.
Well, I don't think there's
you know,
an action to vote on. The request is coming from the board. That's the action.
But what are we supposed, what action are we supposed to do?
I'll repeat. To provide the board with more details, as Renee has started to do, on what that natural river overlay that exists and has existed for many years, what that means, help us understand that, and what would be entailed if we were, this is everyone to consider extending. It currently, as she said, goes to 63rd Street.
Right.
The area that's covered is commonly referred to in documents as the Potawatomi Marsh area.
I get
There's
that,
been
so,
public input and board curiosity on, does it make sense? Should we or would we consider extending that overlay district? And what exactly does that entail? And what are the implications? Some of which Lene touched on.
okay, so John, stop.
Yes.
I get it.
Okay.
And then, so you're asking us in future meetings, and you might need more than the next one, is to review this, hopefully we get that 20-page report. So that we understand the whole
I will give it to
context
you. I
of
will
it,
give it to everybody.
plus what Renee, plus what the ordinance say, and then say what it is exactly they want us to do, or to look at. And do you want to extend it, as you said?
Right, that's
As
exactly.
where would we extend it to? So that's what you're asking all of us to do, to contribute to the discussion and make their recommendation?
In my mind, this would end up being a line item in the recommendation submitted by the Rural Character and
Okay.
Conservation
That's what I would
Committee. And
think.
so planning commission can discuss when we get the complete list, where it falls in the priority. So it might fall way down, it might go up. So you know what I mean?
Well,
I
except
think
for
that-
except for the fact that the board has asked for a response specifically on those details and parameters.
Who's gonna do that work?
Can't we submit Lene's work as
Perhaps, maybe, yeah, we're just seeing. That might be sufficient for the next step.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Lene, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think that maybe in the future, we should approach these in a different way and I understand sort of the confusion and maybe we should just have like a discussion item on our agenda, not just like new business. Maybe that, anyway, something we can work on. I think we're always getting better and iterating as we go, and there is a lot on our plate. In terms of this memo, I think I would like to add, or I think it's worth some research about what a wild and scenic river is. And I did do it, just like a brief look, and it is a federal designation. What I'm concerned about, or what I'm wondering is, you know, it is the other portion of our river west of 63rd. Does it even meet the definition of wild and scenic? You know, and if it doesn't, then do we have the basis for extending the overlay? I don't know, you know, but I think it's worth kind of researching some of that before it's sent to the board.
Right, and then just also to the point, this grew out of the request for the historic district report, which sort of, that was initiated, it started before we got into the 3 advisory committees and ordinance review. So it was sort of separate from that. It's been hanging, it's been out there for several months. So this was the culmination of that request, and this is sort of flowing out of that. No pun intended. But
So
it's
is
not an
there-
attempt.
You know, you guys, I really do, but you know, as a person, I certainly prepare a lot for meetings. And, you know, when you're giving something versus, again, it'd been nice to have this and be prepared for this greater discussion, rather than coming in, it's like, okay, what are you talking about? So that's my only comment is.
Okay, you know, and I thought this fact sheet was in the packet, so. For background, it's a fact sheet on natural river designation.
No,
No, that was.
no,
And I
No, it was not in the packet because
No.
I
so
didn't.
that's just about preparation. That's all it is.
And this
And
letter
I
we
do
just
feel,
got
I
now.
feel bad.
Well, no, you don't have,
No, point-
and
point-
I don't know if anybody, but that's how I
agree with
work.
you.
That's
Point
how I
taken
work.
and point understood.
I'd like to be a contributing member, but you know.
So the story about too much information, we need too much.
Yes.
We need information. Yeah. That's good. The more the better. All right, moving on. I think, John, would you like to give an update on the position?
Yes, an action that you may know from the January, yeah, it's still January. Regular January board meeting. There was a vote to accept a mutually agreed upon separation agreement between the township and Mr. Fry, who at the time was township manager. That action was taken at the regular board meeting. A special board meeting was then held 2 days later on January 15th. And at that board meeting, special board meeting, we passed action to hire, bring into the office what we're calling a month-to-month / temporary basis position we're calling the operations coordinator to help us through this transition. Because I'm sure at some point we will properly post and look for a manager, or maybe not, or redefine it. We needed brains and ability and talent in the office right away. And that is an offer we made to Mr. DeFranco, who accepted it, which is why you might wonder why he was abstaining from votes today. Michigan Townships Association, we consulted with them on these steps. A member of staff, even if it's temporary, cannot serve on the planning commission. So Daniel will be leaving the planning commission. We'll be posting an opening to fill when we can. What did I want to add to that? There was something else. Oh, and this came up in these discussions when I explained that we had set up these, what we've been calling the 3 special committees. We said the proper terminology in a township is an advisory committee. So we need to change how we refer to them. And the good news on that, though, is advisory committees can be made up of board members, planning commissioners, members of the public, and even staff. So we're hopeful that Mr. DeFranco will continue as chair of rural character and conservation, and that is legal, but he cannot serve on this body.
Can we ask him to commit to that tonight?
Yeah, right.
Yes.
To be, okay,
Yes.
he will do that, okay.
Question
Yeah.
is, I understand with him as a secretary, he's going to be leaving, but could he as a staff serve as recording secretary. So that we, honestly, can
That was
we
the best part of
come and
leaving.
record?
Staff can and has historically, there have been staff members that have done minutes for various meetings.
And I would, if you.
I'd be honored.
I might vote against
It
that
all
because we
depends
need
on
his
what the-
attention elsewhere.
If you want this committee to have as detailed of minutes as you have in the past, well, thank you, Daniel, but I don't think anybody's gonna step up and want that detailed, will do the minutes. I've done minutes as secretary and never have done that much in detail. It's like, no way. Unless you're gonna take the recording and have somebody transcribe it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You've done a great job.
Which
thank you.
can be
And
done,
it
that's
is,
how,
yeah,
that's how board minutes are done.
and to throw in my
With the
two cents,
recording.
throw in my 2 cents, they are a lot of work. But I will tell you, when I go back and I look at the minutes from previous years, you can tell, and you can learn a lot from the minutes, and you can tell when there's that gap and the minutes are really shoddy, and it's unfortunate that we lost that information. So I mean, if somebody wants to step up and do the minutes, that's great. But I would recommend that you all think maybe directing a staff member to do it to maintain the quality of the minutes, because they are valuable.
Well, and then the other question is, does the minutes need to be that detailed? Because you always have the recording.
We don't.
They don't, yeah.
They don't, so,
We're spoiled, we love them.
correct.
In fact, our chair used to do minutes, other people have done minutes.
Yeah, I agree, and of course,
Mine were
many
pretty long,
of
I know,
the
yeah.
minutes that I have seen are not quite that detailed. They're giving enough that you had it, and then if there's a question, you go back to the recording.
Yeah.
So it all depends on how, but
We're
that would be
spoiled.
my suggestion. in
Becky
regards to the
spoiled us, you
secretary.
spoiled us.
Well, I guess the question is, well, maybe not. Michael, are you volunteering?
No, I'm questioning.
And I'm not sure, I don't know,
I'm not.
I don't know if we have to decide tonight.
Well, Daniel's going to be doing the minutes tonight, but
Yes.
I guess I would like to just ask if there's a level of interest in anyone in doing the minutes, and would you like me to explain how much you're paid? You get an extra $25 minus.
I can tell you right now,
Taxes.
I'm not interested.
I don't think I could absorb everything that's being said and provide.
Well, that's,
That's the other part.
that's an
recording
issue,
to do
that's an
that.
issue.
I want to concentrate on what's being
Yeah.
said, and it's hard to.
Yeah, I don't know how you.
It's difficult. I will say it's difficult.
You have to do it with a recording, correct?
Yeah, I mean, now.
I always did.
In person, it's
Exactly.
easier to kind of jot down some notes and then I will fill it in with the recording. I try to do it sooner than later because then it goes out.
It's hard to participate in the meeting
Exactly.
and do the minutes.
Right.
And so it sounds like we are looking for, John, did you want to do them by chance?
Excuse me.
I would recommend that if you want that is that, you might have a secretary that can sign it, but you have a recording secretary. And if,
Okay.
and take that $25 and give it to the person who's gonna do the transcription.
Yes.
Because the person who just signs the paper, is it, yes, you don't have to pay me extra to do that, shoot, I'll sign the paper.
Right, okay, I understand that. That's a good proposal.
But I think we're fortunate in that there can be discussion between the chair of this committee and our new operations coordinator on how best to fulfill that
Fill that,
gap. I think
yeah.
it's great that you can do tonight's.
Mhm.
And then everything that's been brought up can be taken into consideration.
Got a question?
Yeah.
What's your scope of responsibilities?
I'm identifying that as I go along.
Okay.
It's broad.
Will it ever be finalized or described?
I know it is, I do have, I mean, I can read it to you.
Yeah,
I
it's-
don't know if I have it on, so.
It's as assigned by the board.
Yeah, it is assigned by the board. I do have a scope of responsibilities that's set, yeah.
Okay, so it's,
It's budget,
well,
I can say that.
go ahead.
Budget is probably his number one responsibility
It's,
right now.
it's actual operations.
And it's
Actual
minutes,
operations, office operations.
Which means.
Anything that needs to happen in the office, like replacing bulbs outside, which
Oh,
we're
you
actually
mean the
replacing.
physical,
Yeah.
Physical.
Oh,
Physical facility,
Keeping everybody under control?
keeping everybody under control.
And the poor guy
Community outreach.
Community outreach.
reports to 5 overseers, so
Is the
Juggling.
construction move ahead or is that stalled?
That's going ahead.
Website.
Website's going ahead. Everything is going ahead.
yeah, nothing's been, I mean, website, we did an RFP, we got 6 applicants, we've alerted them that it's not our burning priority right now, but stay engaged and we'll get to it. We're still compiling a list.
Okay, all right.
And the priority will change day to day.
Right.
So that's a great question. And we're figuring it out.
Well, I'm sorry to lose you, but I think you're gonna do a really great job. You're being very detailed, so, yeah, congrats.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It would be sad to leave you all. I'm so.
You might be back sooner.
I may be back, yeah, I may be back.
You never know.
This gigs month to month, right?
Yeah.
Month to month.
Thank you.
We'll be back.
Daniel, we will miss you.
I will miss you all. I
You're
really
my
will.
buddy.
I know. No, this is, from when I first moved here in South Planning Commission to seeing this planning commission, it's unbelievable that we've totally transitioned so quickly from a purely reactive commission that I think was, a little bit afraid of the applicants to a
Yeah.
really forward-thinking, proactive, commission that asks the really hard questions of the applicant. Because we know that, we're gonna get a better result. So I'm really proud of all of you and I'm really proud to have been part of this team. And it's hard to leave. It really is. So thank you.
You might be back. You never know.
I might be back, you never know.
Keep saying, when will it decided if a search is going to be done?
When will it be decided?
About, yeah.
To be determined.
Okay, so we are moving on. Let's see. I guess, the first thing we'd like to do is, get into the committee reports priority list, but, first, Michael, do you wanna just kind of go over the sheet and explain that to everyone? And I just wanted to say, Denise, I am so proud of you for filling in the sheet. So,
I thought that's what we were supposed to do.
I will leave all this for you.
Well, when did she
Renee.
get it? No one else has had
I
it.
think we need to finalize it first, but that's okay.
Yeah, but that's
Oh, it
okay,
wasn't
I mean,
finalized?
I'm seeing it for the
Oh,
first time.
It is.
Oh, I'm
But I
sorry.
mean,
I thought the sign line.
well, it's been on the website. You know,
Yeah,
we-
it's Google Docs. I thought, you put it on there. It's like, okay, we're supposed to do this.
Yeah, well, not everyone knew how to get into Google Docs, so Jennifer has been very helpful in getting it into that for us, so. That's where it is, but I think Michael will kind of go from there and explain it. And then John, tomorrow, you'll be able to get into this and access this when you're at
I
work.
might need help from my vice chair.
I think that you'll have Jennifer to help,
Or my vice chair.
or your vice chair. Vice chair.
Mr. Wood.
Oh, you're vice chair.
Oh, we have to change special.
Yeah, I saw that. I did.
Right, very good.
Yeah.
Advisory.
Now you're advisory.
Now we're advisory. I can change that easily. Or I can, Jennifer can do it.
I'll do it.
Ready? Yep, okay. So my understanding is there was a need for the board to have a list of what we call them now, advisory committee projects. So at a glance, the board can look at all the advisory committee's activities and goals and look at what's going on about their schedule, what the priority is, who's doing what, that kind of thing. So it's everything that's in the sheet. So I worked with Becky on and Denise on kicking some of this stuff around. And this is takes place in an Excel spreadsheet. So it's one workbook with 3 tabs, one for each advisory committee. And Denise's one that's filled out here on the big sheet is a great example of how it would work from what I get it thoroughly, but I'm sure it's quite well done. And so basically going across, looking at the columns, you have what's the goal? Now those are in the gray bars. What the specific activity or action that's required to accomplish that goal. Then we have it doesn't show up on the big sheet, but we did add, Denise, I'm sorry, a status column, but we can fix that on yours. It's real easy. So there's a status column, if you look at the small one here that says, is it green, yellow, or red? So green means everything's going to plan, yellow, something might be funny going on. We gotta keep our eye on this one, and red means something's off the rails or it's gotta be addressed immediately. So we have status, we have priority, must do, should do, good to do. Read this timing. When's it gonna start? What quarter and what year? And what's the projected finish? Estimated quarter, year. Then what are the zoning issues going to apply to any of these actions, if any? What the location of the particular issue is with regard to geographics. Who's responsible for the project? And this is responsibility. Excuse me. Is there's a responsibility, the first column, responsibility for the proposal. Then there is responsibility for its implementation. So who's responsible for making the pitch? And then once it's approved, hey, we're going to do that. Then whose responsibility is to actually make it happen? And then where's the money coming from? So that's what's on there. And so the idea, I believe, is that the master sheet, if you will, the master spreadsheet will get posted on Google Docs. And correct me if I'm wrong, Becky, the committee, advisory committee chairs will be, are their designee will be, will go into these things and modify them as necessary, but it won't be everybody pitching in and messing around with this thing. It's got to be a controlled document. So either the advisory committee chair or the secretary of that committee, somebody's got to be assigned to making the entries and corrections and so forth. So to keep it accurate. So I would imagine that would probably be looked at once a month after each committee meeting to see if anything's changed and that kind of thing. So
Can you explain again?
Sure.
The two responsibility columns?
Yeah, responsibility is for, okay, we've got to take an action
Right.
On something. And so we've got a, let's see here. I'm trying to think of an example. Let's say on economic development, we're looking at agribusiness. Okay. So we want to do something. So somebody's got to craft what we want to do with regard to agribusiness as part of our economic development committee. Once that's crafted, and then you say, hey, yeah, that's a great thing to do with priority list and so forth. And then somebody's got to manage getting the work done. And if those are the same people, great. But we might assign a particular project that we've identified to maybe an outside resource to do all the work. That kind of thing. So, does that make any sense?
Well, yeah. I mean,
so you got, what's the goal?
the headings are so identical. I guess I just don't see them. Can we?
I know, that's
maybe
why
tweak
on
that?
this
Or just-
page, we
I
put
heard what you just said.
initial responsibility, and then we added ongoing implementation
Mhm.
for it. So we can change that to initial responsibility and ongoing implementation, if that's okay. It's just that we said, once we get a project going, who's gonna assure that it's gonna keep going?
Right,
Is
who's
that
gonna
the
manage
board's
it?
responsibility? Is it a parks responsibility?
There you
Is it, it just really depends.
go. I think it's good to keep them separate.
Is it the zoning administrator's responsibility to
I mean, maybe the headings just simply initial versus.
initial
implementation.
proposal and ongoing implementation, ongoing, right?
Yeah, or just,
Initial and ongoing,
I don't know what those words would.
That's what the,
it'll go up there.
yeah, that's what the sheet says.
Oh,
How do you want
it's on the cover
Yeah,
sheet.
it's on the
Okay,
cover
so when you're looking at the actual document, that's what, okay,
Yeah,
okay. All right, I get it.
Okay.
Thank you. Sure.
it looked like it fit really well onto legal,
It can,
that
if you,
it's readable, so, yeah, I really have to give Jennifer kudos for helping set this up. It's in a document and the tabs are on the bottom. So you have to tab into the bottom to see it.
Lene, were you gonna pull it up on Google Drive? She may have stepped away.
I'm here. No, I don't have Google Drive open.
Okay.
So you look at the workbook.
But I know it's there.
If you're familiar with Excel, the first tab, I believe it's the first.
No, I know
tab, there's a
yeah.
blank,
It's a template.
there's a blank
Yeah.
template there in case we have another committee.
Right.
Somebody can copy that
Right.
and create a new one.
Yeah.
Then there's 3 committees, and then there's a kind of a key to explaining what those columns really are. So that's what it's trying to keep.
So does this key on this one on top, is that a tab?
Yes.
It is, but that's not what's on the key, what's in there right now.
But it will be.
I'm guessing this key is not what's there now.
This is there now.
Oh, that means that just came up today, because I
It
looked at
did,
it.
Oh,
didn't it?
okay.
We just came up today.
Yeah, we did
There's
today.
another one, surprisingly.
This
But I
this
did this
key
from
is up
last
today, and then I printed it today and put it on your desk today. So, yeah,
I'm way ahead of you.
we did
Oh, boy.
take it from the old key, but this
Right.
is,
Yeah.
it had several stages of redo, but yes, it's there.
Oh, this is just this blank.
Well, if you want to go on with the attainable, I mean, I would like to, I'll correct whatever in regards to the advisory and all that, but to move this forward, we're ready to move it forward. Our committee is ready.
I think we all were in December.
Yeah,
We just got slowed down by,
So many other.
I don't know, but
Chris,
we're ready to move it forward.
okay, well, the
We've been ready
tool's
since
ready to
December.
use, so the teams can go on. Jennifer, we can add, you can add initial and ongoing to this, can't you?
Is this it, what I have up? So each group, under the planning commission, each group has a folder. And then in the subcommittee template,
Go to attainable housing.
Go to housing.
it's in the templates, I guess, yes.
Yeah, it's in the templates.
You moved yours, you did like a,
Moved it into your
Yeah, there you
folder. There you go, yay.
mhm.
So we can go back to template and change just that top. The other piece, Michael, the priority, the project status, the green, yellow, red. That is column D.
It's just
A, B,
hidden.
C, D, but we hid it. So if you look up there on the screen,
Oh.
between C and E,
Yeah.
you know,
Why'd you hide
you
it?
see arrow.
Double click on the one to the right. There you go.
There you go. So you can put that in your report if you want, and you can make those columns a little smaller. I mean, definitely priority could be smaller, you could shorten those, but,
Careful.
Yeah, and then wrap text and do whatever.
Oh, yeah, I wrap text, I did all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
Oh, this is
There you go.
great. I love your priorities group A for housing. This is great. Those are exactly what I was thinking would be good priorities for right now.
Kudos.
All right, so where's the master document?
So the master document, Dave, under planning commission, here is
Okay.
templates, subcommittee templates. And I think it's right here, the project status form.
Okay,
And then what you can do is, I think you can
You
probably,
gotta change the heading on that anyway.
yeah.
oh, right. So then you go down to the one that would be, Jennifer, it might be best to just put the template in each one of the groups and delete the tabs. For, at least for them to find their own.
Okay.
Is that going to work?
Like leave the template here, but make one just and put it in rural character and make one for economic development. If that's,
Okay, we can do that tomorrow. The reason we put the tabs is so that you could see the entire workbook.
Well, the reason for the tabs is so that there's one document,
Right.
there's one file.
oh,
All the.
Yeah, and honestly, if you go back to subcommittee folders, like I believe attainable housing, if you look in there, there's a meeting folder in there too. So yeah, that has everything from their meeting. So it doesn't necessarily have to have that per se in it, but just anything for the monthly meetings.
It's kind of nice to have a.
mhm. I like that, Michael, to have the master template. So Attainable did theirs.
I deleted all the tabs for mine, so that you're only seeing for the attainable housing.
We need to get.
It's there down at the bottom. You just gotta,
master
it
document.
goes slow.
I can do a copy and paste.
Or maybe, Michael, you could move all the individual ones into a master at some point.
So they're all separated now?
No, I think I'm the only one that's completed it.
Oh, yeah, that's correct.
All right.
You're all together except.
So I
there's
can
one.
take Denise's, if it's okay with her, and I can just copy that tab and just move it over to the master spreadsheet, you know.
Oh, there you go.
Except that I don't, we're gonna have to fix a couple things.
So you hit like duplicate and then, yeah, you probably know better than I do.
Okay,
Cool. Thank you. That's,
once you get into
by
it.
the way, I think Google Docs is fantastic and a lot easier, in my opinion, than putting things on Teams, but
Okay, that's what we thought.
Yeah.
So to that point, do we know where are we supposed to post agendas and minutes?
Emailed to me.
I do. And you're gonna put them
I will put them in the
So put it right in the
folder
within Google Docs.
within Google Docs.
So we're not using
And then
Teams,
you're gonna go
not
back
using
and move
Teams
things
anymore.
from Teams?
I
I
can.
mean, that's our
I
history.
feel bad,
isn't
but
it?
I don't know how much
I
it costs. I
can.
pay money for it. Yeah.
But
I-
that way I know
Some
when to
people-
post them online too and do the email blocks and
Right.
stuff like
No,
that.
yeah,
That's,
we've got
yeah, you and I do it great.
Yeah, my question,
Yeah, that's
Do
what
we-
we're saying. We're all
do
a
we
little more
need-
comfortable with Google Docs.
are we, this is important. Are we asking Jennifer or the committees themselves to migrate everything that's been stored in Teams? So it's here now.
I think you already did attainable housing, didn't you?
No, that was just for this past month's meeting,
That's where
not
minutes
everything.
and
Would you do
agendas have
that, be
lived.
able to do that? To migrate things over, it's not. Okay, then yes, I think we'll do that. Is that okay?
If it's okay with Jennifer.
It might be easier for somebody who knows, I don't know how to migrate.
You just, I would just have to download it from Microsoft Teams and then back upload it to Google Docs.
You two screens, can it get pulled over?
And unfortunately, no.
That's a nice
Yeah,
idea.
and that doesn't have to happen right. And I just think it's important that the history of the advisory committees
I'll let you do it.
is living in Teams.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Not a problem.
Yes, thank you.
for Doing that.
Becky, do you want
We appreciate it.
legal or letter?
I think we'll do legal.
Okay,
Is that okay? I
that's
think
fine.
it's
I just gotta set
readable.
up the print so that.
Well, and you can set up legal, right?
Yeah, that's not legal. That's actually like poster size. Yeah, 11 by 17. So, but that's the only size I can get it to print where it would print all of it on one page.
Oh, okay. Do we want this size and we don't have legal? Is that what you're saying?
No, we have
It
both.
doesn't fit on it.
It wouldn't fit on a legal sheet. I had to put it on the 11 by 17.
Okay,
Is it because my?
I think
columns are too
it
big?
could fit. on-
Yeah, if you were to wrap the columns, it would definitely
Well,
help.
I did do that, but I can, because, okay, now my printer at home, so I did cut and,
That's what I did.
cut and, Scotch tape.
Yeah.
And it's. They didn't have that legal side paper, so it actually does.
I think. it
But you're gonna have
would fit on-
margins, so you're not gonna, that's still not gonna print to a legal
Yes,
size.
right, I did.
Yeah.
Scissors.
Well, actually,
Did you catch yourself?
well, can I come in and look at it with you tomorrow?
Absolutely. I'm not in until noon tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's always best to call.
Can't stand yourself.
I will.
We're very, very busy right now.
Okay. I'll have to work on this, okay.
Do we need the column that says goal? That's my only.
Yeah.
Oh, because we're putting it on a line across, I meant, okay. All right. Okay, perfect, thank you, Michael. Let's,
How quickly I'm happy to, well, definitions, I mean, how is that, is it just a recommendation of definitions and given to Lene and then Lene brings back? How's this gonna work next? In other words, this is what we wanna do. So, And if we want to move this along, what's next?
Well, my understanding is, I keep saying, since December, we all gave our kind of initial wish list to Lene. I thought this was going under review by staff to get back to us on things that could be done quicker and easier and maybe at no cost. Not necessarily, this is the most important ordinance tweak you're requesting. It's a balancing act to get moving, because the goal was to have a public hearing by February or March on a handful of these. I think everyone's in tune with the goal of, let's get some initial traction and action on ordinances.
Would I need a public hearing for review of definitions? I don't have to have a public hearing for that, do I, Monet?
No, I mean, only for ordinance amendments.
Right.
And certainly
So
ordinance,
there are a few definitions that we might want to look at and whether we want to update those and then move on to the ordinance. So are you saying, John, that you're asking now, Renee, to let's move on and we want to do these ordinance because you're not going to have a public hearing in February on any of these ordinances?
no.
Clearly.
I
Because we're
was
still playing with formatting.
thinking that each of your committees were filling out that priority list. And based on your top priorities, I was gonna look at that and be like, yep, we can do all of yours and all of yours and 2 of yours. And maybe we can do 2 of your top ones, but also this 3rd one is pretty easy on the lower priority. And we're already in this section of the ordinance, so we'll just hit it at the same.
We'll just need to reformat what we've already provided.
No,
Into this sheet.
right.
And maybe add some detail to it.
Right, because I don't
Okay.
think all the committees had in their minds their priorities yet at that
We
level.
were all presented at the December meeting. I've read those minutes.
Yes,
I remember.
yes, like all the yeah. But I think there was still some discussion that even housing was gonna have after they presented it to us.
I thought December was it, but. Okay,
Okay, so yours are all
I'll
in
do
there,
that and then you just tell me what I need to do.
then
next.
she can access it, then they can access it, thank you. Daniel said he would have his in tomorrow,
Yes.
just cut and paste, right?
Well,
No, it took it a little bit more than.
thanks.
Okay,
Michael will help me next week.
he's your vice secretary, is that right?
What? Vice chair.
He's your vice.
All the committees have a chair.
Oh, you're vice
co-chair.
chair
I
of
don't
the
know.
committee, I was really confused. I thought, what are you doing?
Or is it Dave? Yeah,
New name, okay.
it is.
What?
I'm losing it. It's like, you do the minutes.
I was wondering what your.
Dave's the vice chair.
you wrong.
So you can help me do this, right? You're good with spreadsheets.
I actually am first.
I know. All right. I apologize to both of you.
my face been around.
Okay, so let's do quick committee reports, priority list. We don't have to talk about it anymore. Are we done?
We know,
We're done.
Are you done?
done.
We covered
We've
it?
done this
I
for
have an
months.
Okay,
We just didn't need to get it in the spreadsheet and then move on.
Now, this isn't a priority item. So this is an update to my committee. I don't know if we need a motion on this or not, but I would like to add a committee member to my committee, Chris Clark. So he attended the prior meeting. We made, oh, there's Chris right there, if you want to see Chris. Chris is an excellent
Chris.
human being. But at our last Rural Character and Conservation Committee, we unanimously moved to recommend that Chris Clark be appointed to the Rural Character and Conservation Committee.
I thought all the committees we didn't do any type of true action. It's just, we asked
No,
people.
the planning commission voted on all of that.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess I don't know.
yes, we did. So
So long ago.
Daniel's asking that we approve the appointment of
So
Mr.
moved.
Clark to the rural character.
So moved.
I'll support.
Moved by Webster, supported by everyone. All in favor, supported by Eiley.
Hi.
Aye.
And I'd like to
Well
add, I could like to add, Mr. Clark did speak to the advisory committee when it last met.
He did.
So we got
That's
to
right.
know him and ask questions and sort of go through that, so it didn't seem necessary, since the chair was, or the former chair was recommending this.
So we welcome you, Mr. Clark. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
And I would like to add that we're looking for one, maybe even two new members to join economic development, because one of our original people is probably leaving the committee. And we were small to start. We only had 5. We could have up to 7, I guess. So we've been brainstorming on people. But you might all have suggestions. You can
Economic
share them with
development.
either me or the vice chair, Mr. Eiley, so we can think about this.
I gave you a suggestion. The owners of mini golf.
Yeah, but they're not here. I did pursue
Oh,
that.
you did?
They're here, they're in Florida. half the year.
Oh, that's a bummer. So,
Okay. Anyone else? Yeah. Okay, moving on, township board update, please. Oh, last thing, ODC. I think, were you gonna say something about ODC?
So this is, I put this in the packet, or I put this on our, where is mine? I put it on your desk. This is something that we just got today. I didn't get to really review it. I just wanted to be fully transparent that this is what we received from the ODC today in terms of a proposal. I have not reviewed it, but I wanted everyone to have it.
Did it go to everyone that's in the meeting Friday, or do you know?
What do you mean everyone
He
is in the
just
meeting Friday?
got it.
The meeting on Friday doesn't really pertain to this, though, I don't think. It's a bigger
Oh,
picture.
no, it's about, okay. What did I do? Okay.
Okay. Is there any discussion about that? Anybody else? Hmm? You don't have it?
It's on your,
Were you
you should have it in the pile of papers.
It was on your desk.
Is it on the, is it in the packet?
It was not, we just got it today.
I would agree with number 2.
Okay.
Definitely is that we should, and if in fact the township is willing, that we should review our ordinance about that mining. I totally agree with number 2. I don't understand number 1 necessarily is, and I had as one of my topics is, what do we know is going on with top grade? What's happening with top grade right now? They were supposed to come back this
This
meeting and they
They
didn't.
requested
Have we,
another
Linnea, have we
delay.
gotten anything from top grade?
They keep requesting.
Nope, we do not have anything from Top Grade. They said they wouldn't have anything for this meeting, maybe not next meeting. I said we do need to button this up. I also asked if ODC had permission to go onto their property, and they said that they did not.
They did, so they're.
I believe that when
therefore we can't do
anyone's,
number 1.
Not really viable.
Interesting.
I believe that when someone submits to the township, they are providing approval for staff to go onto their property. I'm gonna have to check that. So I might be able to go on myself, or maybe have one member from ODC. That's something we're gonna have to check on with the attorney.
I would definitely say if you need an act, as that the township move forward with number 2. On here is that, to have ODC work with it and whether our ordinances are correct in regards to mining. That would be my, do you need a motion for that?
I didn't know this was an agenda item, so
It was added on. It was just a correspondence that was received today. I mean,
are you just sharing it for information at this point, or?
yeah, that's why I got it today and I wanted everyone to see it. I can email it to everyone too, so they have it electronically, but so you can treat it as a correspondence received today.
Well, I think the number 2 section is something we should consider adopting.
Yep.
I think it's a no-brainer myself.
I tend to agree.
Are you saying that we
Oh, I-
probably need to meet with them first?
I'm just saying we're meeting with them this week.
We are
to
meeting with
discuss
them this
the
week.
broader story.
But can we have an agreement from the planning commission that we all would like that?
Sure.
Okay. So
Number two.
number two.
Number
Then I
one,
thought-
Lene has to check on regards to how that's,
just on my.
if that can be followed through or whatever.
Yes, number one.
So number
she'll
one
look
is
at.
like.
No, I think
We'll follow
we could vote to endorse the idea
Number two.
because there's a budget consideration. I believe it has to go to the board for approval.
Okay,
We can support the idea.
Policy.
Well, okay.
All right, so is there,
I think I can.
you made a motion to support
yes.
Yeah.
number two, the idea
Forward to the-
of number two.
Yes, the idea.
And
number two.
Eileen supported that.
Okay.
All right.
Moved by Webster, supported by Eileen. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passed unanimously.
One quick question, the motion is to endorse.
I believe that's the word that John's suggesting that we endorse.
Number two, is
The,
that what
number
you
two,
said?
the, for ODC network
The
to,
ODC update. proposal for
Yep.
planning.
that we
Perfect.
endorse it and. Yeah, I could say township get the funds, but you know, I want to include that.
I think, are we ready to move on to the township board update?
I'm ready if you are.
All right,
All right. So Township Board met twice in January, on the 12th for our regular meeting and a special meeting on the 14th. At the regular meeting, I always report, public comment was made on the historic district idea. So on extending Natural River Overlay District. We also heard from County Commissioner Kapinga and the owners of the Ivy House Special Events Center, because we were discussing a development agreement with them the same night. John Vanderbeek gave an update on potential trail plans and asked the board to support his bridge to the beach plan, which I believe we did. And then we went on, then we voted on the separation agreement I've already mentioned to you with the township manager. Elliot Sturm was appointed to the opening on the Parks and Recreation Commission. Many of you probably know him, he's a member. I always say fire brigade, that's the English term, but the fire district. So he'll be joining Parks, which meets next Wednesday. Repeat, this is where we accepted the historical district report and asked for the planning commission to give us more detail and review relative to the natural river overlay. We approved there was a 2-option development agreement for Ivy House. I'll give a little background since that approval came from planning commission. When they started to dig the detention pond and back, it seemed that the water table was much closer to the surface. And that they could maybe make it bigger, but shallower. And then Drain Commission got involved because the County Drain Commission would really like to put a county drain in front of the property. What is now a drainage ditch. That would require public hearings to establish a special assessment drain district. They agreed to, the agreement that we reached with them was they would do one of the 2 options. Either one would work.
Ivy House.
Ivy House, because this was delaying putting their foundation in. And if they didn't get the foundation in, they'd be canceling weddings that are already booked May, June, July. So, and there's some follow-up meetings with our engineer on this aspect. So thing is, we kept it moving forward, but that's some of the detail behind that.
I'm glad to see that we moved that forward.
Was that?
I'm glad to see that we came to an agreement. We're able to
So
move
are
that
we,
forward.
and so were they.
Yeah.
Because they were really upset.
Yeah, I would.
Got stopped. It's like,
Yeah.
uh-oh.
And Dana did an excellent job of moving it forward.
Yeah.
And then it did turn out that actually there's probably more depth in back than was originally reported to them. I'm not sure who told them it was 5 feet, but
Yeah, they started digging and it was deeper than they realized, and Dana was able to kind of make it dig it a little deeper, and that we would handle the drain district part of it, and they could proceed with their project.
Then we approved a revised new township logo, but we did ask for a color tweak that we're waiting to get back from the design firm. We accepted we acknowledged getting 6 proposals from the RFP for new website design. Chief Janik addressed us on issues relative to Blue Star intersections and discussions with the counties. Some of this was in the paper 2 weeks ago, and traffic lights versus roundabouts, stuff like that. Parks and Recreation did a really good presentation. There's been talk of potentially providing on some of the township land adjacent to the dog park for a cross-country training field and possibly even a place to hold meets. We have one of the highest rated track teams in the state at the high school. They can't hold meets at home and they practice in the streets. And the coach came to kind of implore us. But there are ideas floating out there that you'll hear more about later that could make some of this come true.
And where's that dog park at?
Our dog park,
Yeah.
63rd and what's that? 3.
136.
He's not quite Gleason.
134.
Yeah,
Okay, I think I know where it's at.
134 towards the
Versus the
highway
one over at
west.
Schultz. Is it Schultz Park?
that's
Yeah,
not us.
that's
that's
Douglas.
Douglas.
Yeah.
If you turn down 63rd,
63rd.
there are signs marking where to turn.
I know, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. We passed new office operating procedures relative to COVID since the state ones expired December 31st. So we unlocked the door, we're requesting masks. We acknowledge that the agreements that formed the Tri-Community Recycling Committee expired December 31st. So it doesn't technically exist at this point. We have 4 representatives to that committee, including Mr. DeFranco. So we're hoping to get a presentation at the February board meeting from the former chair on potential. The 3 communities going to vote to keep it going or tweak it. But right now it formally doesn't exist, but we're all aware of that. And then the meeting on the 14th, I've already told you about, that was to establish the office coordinator position and agree to offer it to Daniel, and we're thrilled that he accepted it. And we also had to vote to send a letter. This was sort of something that almost fell through the cracks, but didn't. Township had to formally write in support of a grant application that the Blue Star Bike Trail has made to, was it a TIP grant? TAP grant. It's a state grant, but the state agency that would give this grant would ignore the application if the municipality hadn't said, A, we like it, and B, yes, this bike trail can go through the park over there by, the park nobody knows about. At the other edge of,
On Allen.
no, across, behind the cemetery. And some
There's a
pack.
park?
Yeah, it's called like Amalanche, something like that.
Is it inside?
Yeah, if you're looking
It's in
at
the
the
township.
cemetery,
The township?
it's to the left, it's like a big gully.
Seriously?
It's not really a
Does the
park, it's just.
Park Commission,
It's open.
does the Parks Board know about it?
Yes, yeah. It's,
It's property owned by the parks.
point is, the next day, this letter went off. So they could potentially give the bike trail this grant.
Yay.
Thank you. Any questions on board activity?
Lene, do you have any staff update? Thank you, John.
Well, my only staff update is I won't be working in the office tomorrow because of the weather, but I'll be available remote. And then I'll be in the next Tuesday, but then the week of February, I think it's the 6th or 7th, I'll be out of town that week.
Okay.
And we do have agenda items for the February meeting.
Okay.
believe we have a special land use for a cannabis grow facility at Just Barnes Drive in one of the units owned by LB, kind of next to Aficionado. In that first building.
Across the street from what, that special use that we just did.
Yeah. So across the street from the use we just did, there's a provisioning center that's, being built right now, a retailer provisioning center, and then down the road, I think we have 3 grow facilities approved down there. So this would be the 4th. Yeah, it's really quite a node. A green node.
And only one at the north end.
And only one at the north end, yeah.
There's only one north end.
It's.
We don't allow any grow to the north either, though, but yeah. Just one to the north.
New standard.
John.
Somebody was saying, boy, that's a lot of cannabis, and I said, well, how many places can you buy a pack of cigarettes in town? How many places can you buy a bottle of wine?
Have we seen any kickback from the state?
We're told we'll be notified in April. Takes a year.
Is it?
Yeah, so we're gonna get a payment this year, this calendar year. I'm not sure which fiscal year. This calendar year, we're expecting $30,000 to $35,000 to come to us because of new standard.
Alone.
Just one, right?
And then we do get all the growth facilities, all the retailers pay us $5,000 a year license fee. It's starting.
And if you have 2 licenses, like for recreational and medical, it's $7,500.
That's right.
Okay,
Does that go into a special line item or does that go into your general fund?
Well, it's a line item in general.
In the fund?
Because technically the 5,000 or 75, that money should only be spent on conducting, whatever we have to do to allow those facilities.
Oh.
oversight.
So it's not,
regulation.
yeah,
But
it's like,
the-
oh, you got some money.
The revenue share, the big chunk is open
Mhm.
to spend. It's sort of like the ARPA funds. We have the rescue plan of which we've received half. So those will be discussion points and coming up soon, special meetings of the board to discuss budget items.
We do need a staff person for oversight, remember? Not
Oh, enforcement?
Enforcement.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, that's a big one.
Yep. Okay, anything else tonight, everyone? I thought it'd be a lot quicker meeting, I'm sorry, they aren't quick. Any other? good news? All right, next meeting, February 28th, 6 o'clock.
Move to approve, move to adjourn.
Already thanked. Yeah, I had thank you on my list, but I already thanked you, but. you can pass it.
Thank you.
Not goodbye.
No, it's not goodbye. You'll see.
Also, Daddy's in the office every day now.
Now you really can't
Now
get.
we're learning how to
Motion to
work
support it.
together.
What?
Mike,
Okay, Mike's.
Oh, I didn't get that.
we already adjourned.
We didn't vote. Aye.
Mike adjourned, Mike moved. Who supported it?
Mike.
Oh, wait, okay.
Am I officially resigned?
Oh,
Oh,
It's not.
I've got 14 of this.
well, you're officially
It's
hired
been coming into the office.
as
Thanks, Lenny.
This is the one I
as a
said.
temporary employee.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you,
Move to
Lene.
adjourn, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Lenny, I will be in touch tomorrow. I get in around noon.
I'll put some papers on your desk.
Right, I'm stopping the recording.